Hello and welcome back, guys. We're now starting a part 2 of Like Glass, We Shatter, written by EverythingIsGayWhenYoureEnbi. You can find author's profile link in the description. Let's begin chapter 1. The day started off as a nice day, the sun was shining, the birds were singing, Izuku was getting ready to get dressed for his 3rd birthday. Kaken can come over later that day and they'd have a party. Izuku couldn't wait. Daddy walked into his room, rushing him the rest of the way through his morning routine. Before hugging Izuku, and rushing off to work. Izuku wasn't concerned, his daddy usually did that when he was running late. Mama then came in and helped Izuku put his school supplies into his bag, picked him up, and took him into the kitchen to eat breakfast. Today he was having tamago cake gohan. Hooray! Itadakimasu. Izuku giggled happily as he dug in. After he had finished eating, Izuku grabbed his things. Then ran to his kindergarten, barely at the end of the block. He met up with Kaken and a few other children in front of the building. Katsuki perked up, once Izuku entered his field of view. Took you long enough, Izuku. We turned 10 while you were away for F's sake. Katsuki ruffled Izuku's hair, grinning when Izuku swatted his hands away and tried to fix it. The other children giggled, as Izuku flushed and pouted. Izuku gave up and just pulled his hair to cover his eyes. It wasn't my fault. Papa woke me up late. He pouted at his best friend and crossed his arms to make his point even more grown up. Izuku's sudden anxiety caused his stutter to appear. Ha! You don't even have your quirk yet, dumb Izuku. At least be on time. Kaken gently poked Izuku's side, tickling him until he fell. The rest of the group of children giggled behind their hands. Why are you being SSO mean, Kaken? Izuku scrubbed at his face, wiping away the tears forming. He wasn't hurt, it was more the shock of falling. I was only a little late. Katsuki frowned, rubbing his neck as he thought over his words and actions. He grimaced in embarrassment before opening his mouth again. Only to be interrupted. One of the other kids chirped up, if you don't have a quirk, you're useless, Izuku-kun. My mama said so. The kid pointed at Izuku as he spoke. The other kids gasped before giggling again. A new one, a girl that Izuku rarely talked to, my mama said a Deku was someone useless. And Izuku's name can be read as Deku. She said, pointing at Izuku as he pushed himself up from the dirt. Useless Deku Midoriya. The group of children giggled, pointing at Izuku and chanting. Useless Midoriya, Deku is all you are. You can't even talk right yet. A few threw dirt and pebbles at Izuku as he began to cry. Crybaby. They laughed. Izuku crouched on the ground, covering his ears as he cried. Finally, the bell rang, causing the bullies to go find actual toys to play with. Katsuki hesitated, hands stretched towards Izuku, like he wanted to help. But eventually walked away as well. His help most likely wouldn't be wanted. When Izuku went home later, he told his mama what happened. He sobbed while doing so, but he did it. Mama ruffled his hair, said she'd do something about it, and put band-aids on his aukis. Izuku felt better after talking about it with Mama. A RBB band he hadn't even noticed was there had loosened. A few days later, Mama packed up the car and took Izuku to the doctor's, letting him skip school for a little bit. Izuku brought along his present Mike plushie, to help his confidence. Having a hero always made doctor's visits easier. Once they were checked in, and had gotten back into the office, the doctor took a few x-rays of Izuku's foot. Dr. San placed the x-rays in front of Izuku and his mother, pointing to the pinky toes. As you can see, Izuku does have the extra joint in his left foot, but not in his right one. Due to this, he may develop a quirk, he may not. However, seeing as he hasn't by now. The doctor rubbed his chin before looking at Izuku's mother. I'm sorry, but your son's quirk is either dormant or simply not there. The words caused Mama to freeze. Her grip on Izuku's shoulder tightened when he went to speak. He wanted to know how they'd come to such a conclusion. What process did they do to discover that? Was it connected to his genetics? Or did they run a study with other quirkless people? Was it even real? I see. Thank you, doctor. We should be going now. Mama stood up as the doctor opened their mouth to speak again. She pulled Izuku along, and rushed out to the clinic. Fumbling as she paid at the front desk. Her hand never left Izuku's wrist. Pulling him with her, to and fro. When they got out in front of the car, Mama made Izuku look her in the eye. You cannot, under any circumstance, tell your father. Your father isn't a kind man, Izuku. Mama paused, liking her lips before continuing. He may hurt me if you do. Okay. You have to tell him you have a quirk related to, luck. I have a grandmother that had a death quirk, so it's believable. Tell him you have bad luck. No matter what happens. Promise me, Izuku. Nodding quickly, Izuku pulled at his wrist. Mama. You're hurting my wrist. Izuku slowly said. His stutter popped up again. Mama instantly loosened her grip. She gently pushed Izuku into the car. Looking around the entire time, almost afraid. Izuku didn't kick his feet as they drove home. He didn't play with present Mike. He didn't ask Mama about getting ice cream. He sat in silence, quietly in shock of the news still. When they got home, Izuku was gently ushered into his room. Mama and Daddy shouted later that night. Izuku curled under his blanket, covering his ears and wishing they would stop fighting. Tears streamed down his cheeks as the shouting only grew louder. A few months had passed since his 5th birthday. Daddy had started to come home later, smelling foul. It always smelled like smoke when he was around, now. Either smoke, or like the grown-up juice Mama had in her room. His words would be slurred when he spoke to Izuku. Izuku didn't know why, but he did know it made Mama upset. When Mama got upset, Izuku had to go to his room. That seemed to happen more often now. One night, Izuku had been coloring in his room. Mama didn't want him in the kitchen when she wasn't home. Careful to stay in the lines of the present Mike picture to show Mama. When, slurred shouting could be heard coming from the living room. Quietly getting his things together, Izuku rushed to put them away. Before Daddy came into his room and got mad again. When he hid in his closet, Izuku heard his bedroom door open and heavy stomps on his floor. Izuku. Why is your room so DMN dirty? Covering his ears at the shouting of the man that was supposed to be his father. Come out now, before I tan your hide. Not heeding the thinly veiled threat, Izuku hid further into his corner. Boxes of toys and clothes hid his shaking body. He began to sob quietly, accidentally alerting his father as to where he was. Izuku Midoriya. Get out here now. Daddy wrenched the closet door open. Smoke spewed out of his mouth, fire liking at the air every time he opened it. Some of the spare embers started to singe a couple of boxes, clothes beginning to catch flame. Stop crying like a baby. Izuku screamed, as the hot fire got closer to his small body. His hair caught on fire from the ashes of Daddy's quirk. Something that had fascinated Izuku so much, now hurt him beyond belief. I'll give you something to cry about. Daddy's voice boomed, his fire spilling onto the carpet. Izuku screamed in fear and pain as it fell onto him too. Daddy didn't stop his quirk, he let it burn away at Izuku's skin. Burning away hair, then skin, then muscle. As Izuku felt his eyes start sizzling, and his body beginning to feel crunchy from the black soot, the world went dark. Izuku felt like he was being yanked backwards, unable to see anything. The pain reversing, the fires being put out, the door closing. Then he was back in the dark closet. Daddy's voice yelled from outside. There was a small green shard in front of him. Izuku frowned, staring at it as his eyes continued to water. He covered his nose with his sleeve as he sniffed. Hesitantly reaching for it, Izuku was suddenly flashed with memories of flames burning his hair, his eyes, melting his skin, of flames everywhere then nowhere. Izuku felt his eyes widen, tears spilled down his cheeks, his jaw clamped shut. Then they closed, and he slumped forward. Passed out as he clasped the shard. Mama had changed too. She was more jumpy, pulling away from Izuku more. She seemed to zone out for large amounts of time. She smelt like daddy more often too. Sour fruits. Izuku didn't like it. Mama? Izuku asked, his voice quiet in the near silent home. Once so full of vivid life, now empty. Are you okay? Mama continued to stare out the window. Hand moving as she kneaded dough. Mama. Izuku gently placed his hand on his mama's arm. Nearly jumping away when she flinched away from his touch. Oh goodness. Mama whirled to stare at Izuku, before obviously slumping in relief. Hello baby. What are you doing, up so early? Izuku fiddled with his fingers. The clock says 8:30 Mama, it's a normal time to wake up. Mama glanced at the time. Oh my. I'm sorry honey, I would have thought I'd be done with breakfast by now. Well, do you want to help me? I'll call you out of school today, and we can have fun, okay? Would you like to do that? Izuku nodded excitedly, bouncing in place, happy that Mama had snapped out of whatever she had been in. When Izuku finally opened his eyes, he looked around. Why was he in a white room? Why am I here? Did something happen? Izuku rubbed his eyes tiredly. He just wanted to sleep again. Maybe a little longer wouldn't hurt. The next time Izuku woke up, Mama was there. She was crying but it would be okay. Struggling to sit up, Izuku exclaimed to his mama, Mama, it's okay. I'm right here. Don't cry, please. Oh Izuku. Mama cried, throwing herself onto Izuku. Backing off instantly when he hissed in pain. Oh I'm so sorry baby. It's okay, everything is going to be okay. What happened? Izuku quietly asked. Oh honey you were playing in your room, and the boiler exploded. Your daddy had to rush you to the hospital. Mama gently brushed Izuku's hair from his face. Izuku flinched away from her cool hands. What? No, that's not what happened dash. He tried to tell Mama what really happened. Oh baby. Mama shushed him, I'm sure that's not what happened. It must have been your imagination. She, more gently this time, pulled Izuku into a hug. Izuku sputtered, trying to tell her again and again what really happened. Over and over. With her only cooing and getting more annoyed with him. After the third time of trying to explain, Mama was upset. That is enough, Izuku. Mama said sharply, your father did nothing to deserve you lying about him like this. Izuku felt tears begin to slide down his cheeks. I'm not lying. You have to believe me Mama. I would never lie about this. Enough. Izuku, Mama stood up sharply. I need to get back to my shift. I know you just went through something very traumatizing, but I don't have time for you to try and make your father out to be a villain. Mama stomped out, the door shutting heavily behind her. And suddenly, Izuku was alone. Chapter 2 Izuku took a few more days to become healed enough to go home. During the time he stayed at the hospital, Daddy didn't visit him once. Izuku also learned that he had been in a medically induced coma for a week or so. Before he woke up the first time, he slept for a few more days afterward. The day he was able to go home was the first time he saw his reflection. They had been able to keep the scarring to a minimum. Because of how quickly Daddy had been able to get Izuku to the hospital. They hailed him as a hero. Izuku didn't believe them. He knew what he saw. His daddy was not a hero. Izuku stared into the mirror. His new scars barely looked like old freckles. Probably where the ash had flecked against his cheeks the longest. Izuku mused. He didn't want to look at his back, the doctors said that was where the worst of it was. Taking a deep breath, Izuku took off his shirt and forced himself to look. It looked better than Izuku thought it would, kind of like how stars were illustrated in his classroom. Little starbursts freckled across his back. The skin around them was tinted white and red. It wasn't that bad, but he hated it. The scars flecked along his rib cage, curling up but avoiding his shoulder blades. Shaking his head, Izuku pulled his shirt back on. Refusing to think about anything like that now. They were going to get ice cream and he was going to enjoy it. Anything was better than hospital food, Izuku would eat cardboard at this point. Izuku walked out of the bathroom, immediately latching onto Mama. Daddy held his hand out for him to hold, and he did. After hesitating for a few seconds. Maybe it was just his imagination, he shouldn't make Daddy upset over something that was just in his head. Izuku giggled as his parents swung him, forward and backwards, his little legs kicking in the air when they swung him forward. Daddy and Mama let go of Izuku's hand to buy some ice cream. While they weren't looking, he ran forward a bit. He wasn't looking where he was going. Accidentally running into the street. Izuku only heard the sound of a horn and screaming, then felt his body get violently hit from the side. His ribs made an awful crunch noise, his arm being forced into his side, he was flung forward and backward, vision going black as little starbursts clouded his field of vision, the pain was pure agony but then it just went away. When his vision cleared, Izuku was standing by Mama and Daddy as they paid for the ice cream. Izuku clung to Mama's leg for the rest of the walk, nearly jumping out of his skin any time he heard a car. Izuku ignored the odd instances, thinking it was just his mind messing with him, they kept happening. Maybe he was still just imagining it, Daddy wouldn't hurt him. Right. Izuku ignored when he got sick over Daddy's cooking. He ignored when Daddy caused his hand to lightly burn when Daddy had grabbed him. Izuku ignored when Daddy made him hurt until he passed out. He ignored when Daddy caused the feeling of being flung backward without moving. Daddy wouldn't hurt him. He loved Izuku. Izuku continued to ignore it. Nearly a year had passed, Daddy was steadily growing worse. Izuku had to ignore more burns, more bruises. He ignored the concerned glances from his teachers. He had to ignore it. Izuku was scared to go near someone who he was supposed to love and trust. Someone meant to be his father. The man certainly didn't act like it now, he was someone to hide from. The day had started normally, Hisashi giving Izuku yucky food before he went to school. Izuku hid from the bullies that harassed him. He played with Kaken and his few friends. He enjoyed the time he got to learn. When Izuku got home, though, his normal day suddenly turned eventful. A villain attack was on TV. Izuku was watching it. He watched as his father billowed flames onto civilians and heroes. Inko watched everything, the ticking clock on the wall, the spinning fan, the blanket moving slightly over her little Izuku's legs. The fire that was on TV was so familiar. She could see Hisashi on it. She could see Izuku crying in relief when Hisashi was captured. She saw the flames. Those awful, awful flames. Flames that hurt her poor little boy so many times. Inko watched as the heroes took her husband into custody. Inko watched, disconnected from reality. At least, until Izuku hugged her legs. She looked down, waiting for him to speak. So quietly, soft even though Hisashi wasn't here. Wasn't that a horrible thought? She had ignored all the signs. Izuku getting sick more often, becoming quieter, more reserved. Her baby avoiding his father more and more. Hesitant at eating her husband's food. And Inko had caused it. By not believing Izuku when he said it was hurting. Now she would protect him. Hisashi would never come back again, would never hurt Izuku again. Mommy would make sure of it. But suddenly, Hisashi was there. Hisashi was the one hugging her legs, grinning up at her, disguised as her precise little boy. Are we safe from him now, Mama? That filthy voice asked, mimicking her son's voice. His freckles stood against pale skin, scars barely faded. The black hair shining in the red light from the flames he made. Flames he would use to hurt her Izuku again. Inko had to protect her son, she had to protect herself. Using her quirk, Inko shoved her wretched husband away from her. She whipped her head around to look for Izuku, to know he was safe. Only to see him where she had shoved Hisashi. Gasping in horror, Inko rushed over to Izuku. Shushu, I'm so sorry Izuku. I am so sorry my little boy. It's okay. I love you, we'll be okay. Shushu. Inko gently wrapped her arms around her shaking baby, trying to ignore the satisfaction of nearly hurting him. Hugging her baby, Inko pushed down his fears. Pushed away that DMN satisfaction. Deep into her mind, never to be seen again. But it never left. Inko could feel the anger, the satisfaction and the ugly discomfort deep in her chest. She could feel it, always. Broiling through her body, tendrils of it spreading, deep into the night. It had warmed her body when she had hurt her little Izuku. Something that could never happen again. The anger at Hisashi had been pushed away, the hurt away from her mind, when she had used it on Izuku. It felt so nice, to be free of her hurt and guilt, if even just for a second. Inko couldn't get the feeling of it out of her mind. The burning want nearly overtook her, every time she saw Izuku. She didn't want to hurt him. She just wanted the pain to go away. Maybe if Izuku went away maybe the feelings would go away. Izuku cautiously came out of his room a few days after Mama had started hitting him. It looked like she had made breakfast for them, like before Daddy had started hurting him. Before everything bad had happened. Curiously, Izuku crept into the dining room from the hallway. It smelled like a Western breakfast, so good. It smelled like Mama had brought out her yummy spkees. Oh, good morning Izuku. Inko smiled down at her baby, do you want some hash browns with your eggs? I know you like them more than I do, so, Izuku nodded excitedly. Yes please, Mama. Izuku bounced happily as he tried to help Mama by setting the table while she finished cooking. Inko smiled at her excited little one, pulling down some spkees to season it just right for her baby. Adding some thyme and some castor oil leaves, Inko smiled happily at her little helper. All their problems would be over with, soon. Plating their food, Inko helped little Izuku up into his chair. Say ah Izuku. Inko held up a fork with food on it, planning to feed her baby like old times. Izuku giggled, I'm not a baby mama. He still listened to his mother, though. She only wanted the best for him, after all. After the first few bites however, Izuku started to feel sick. Really sick. Holding his tummy, Izuku tried to tell Mama that he didn't want to eat anymore. His eyes began to fill with tears. Coughing as he gagged slightly. Inko continued to feed Izuku though, frowning when he tried to fight her on it. You need to eat Izuku, how are you going to grow big and strong if you don't? Izuku couldn't answer her, she just shoved more food in his face. Izuku's tummy couldn't handle the pain anymore and he tried to run to the bathroom. Falling to his knees, Izuku threw up. Over. And over. He gagged and coughed until nothing was left in his little stomach. Looking up at his mama with watery eyes, Izuku could only cry from the pain he was in. Inko only smiled from her spot at the table. A few small hits here, pushing the boy around with her quirk there. Apologies and excuses would be frequent after that. Makeup to hide the new bruises too, she hated the satisfaction. But it felt so DMN good, almost like Inko was getting revenge on Hisashi for hurting her by hurting his son. Izuku was down with a fever the next few days, refusing to eat anything Inko gave him. He felt nauseous whenever he even thought of eating. He was so hungry. But his tummy hurt too much to eat. She said he was hurting her. But she had already hurt him right. Izuku didn't know what was happening anymore. Daddy went away. And then Mama changed and started being mean. Izuku curled up under his blankets, thrashing as though in the middle of a nightmare. Bolting up and to the side, Izuku retched up stomach acid and water. Coughing, Izuku cried. All he wanted was for things to go back to normal. Inko came into Izuku's room once he was done vomiting. Hey baby, I brought some soup for you, would you please eat for me? You're never going to get over this flu if you don't eat. Inko held up a bowl of what looked like carrot stew. There were a few leaves that looked like carrot leaves. There were small chunks of what seemed like white carrots. Izuku, feeling guilty over the kicked puppy look on his mom's face, agreed to drink the soup. He was fine for a few minutes, making Izuku think he imagined the time he ate. How Mama just sat there and watched Izuku suffer. But, then he started to have trouble breathing. He was probably just imagining it, Mama wouldn't hurt him. Right. Izuku was gasping for breath now, his lungs just couldn't seem to open enough anymore. Izuku just couldn't force himself to keep breathing as his vision started going dark. His mother was just acting as though nothing was happening. My poor boy, you must be so tired. She cooed at his limp form. Inko watched as Izuku's lips turned blue and his chest stopped rising, finally. There we go, just rest Izuku. Izuku's eyes stared up at Mama with betrayal. His lungs burned for oxygen. Eventually, his eyes closed. The pain grew and grew in his body. After checking for a pulse, Inko was happy to see that the reason for her problems was dead. She wasn't a bad mother though. She loved her little Izuku, would always take care of him. Izuku still said he was safe around Inko, so he was. Inko would always ignore that growing amount of disgust when Izuku called her mom. She wasn't a bad mother. She wouldn't be like Hisashi. She fed her little boy and made sure he was happy. She wasn't Hisashi. Izuku snapped backwards, as though his body was being pulled. Breathing deeply. Izuku blinked a few times at his mama and the bowl of soup in front of his lips. Actually, I'm not really hungry, Mama. Izuku mumbled, putting the bowl down in his lap. He looked down as he said it, sniffing as tears came to his eyes. A musty smell was starting to permeate the room. Inko smiled at her baby, though it was strained. Oh, course Izuku, it's all right. I understand. Inko ruffled her boy's hair. It'll be in the fridge when you want it. She kissed Izuku's forehead, then left the room. Izuku was left alone. Chapter 3. Kaken was becoming mean around the other kids. He lightly burned Izuku, taunted him and stole his lunch. Whenever they were alone together, Kaken helped bandage the burns. He gave Izuku back his lunches and apologized, over, and over, and over again. He apologized a lot lately. Izuku didn't think much of it, only asking Kaken to not burn him as heavily. Whenever he went a little overboard, Izuku didn't feel tethered to his body for the rest of the day. His back was beginning to hurt. Mama said it was growing pains, but they weren't supposed to hurt this bad, right? They weren't supposed to feel like someone was stabbing through his back, right? Mama would give him a heating pack, and the pain would ease. So it's fine. Right. It was fine. He was fine. Fine. Everything is fine. Kaken had a few new bruises on his arms. They had started to show up more, and more. Izuku quickly grew concerned. He knew Kaken would get into fights, mostly to fight Izuku's bullies, but he didn't think these were from that. He knew Aunt Mitsuki would hit Kaken whenever he did something wrong. He himself had gotten lightly smacked. But he never thought she would actually hurt Kaken. Izuku started to bring bandages in his backpack to school. If Mama noticed they were missing, she never said anything. Only restocked them, including more things for bruises and burns. I'm fine, Zuku. I swear. My mom just got mad at something I did wrong. Promise. Kaken held up his pinky for a pinky promise to ease Izuku's worries. Izuku smiled as he hooked his pinky with Kaken's. Fine. Now hold still, I wanna make sure this is gonna stick. Izuku looked down and carefully smoothed over the tape, holding a patch over a long scratch. It nearly spanned down from the top of his hand down to his elbow. Where'd you even get a scratch like this, Kit Kat? Kaken said as he rubbed Izuku's curls over his eyes. Don't worry about it, freckle face. He grinned when Izuku blushed and tried to fix his hair. At least my freckle face is cute. Izuku giggled, sticking his tongue out at Kaken. Kaken lunged at Izuku, mine's cuter, as able to push Izuku onto the ground. Kit Kat jabbed his hands into Izuku's sides as he tickled him. Izuku giggled and grappled with Kaken as he attempted to squirm away. Mitsuki was starting to walk towards them, smoking a cigarette. Once Kaken noticed her, he quickly got off of Izuku. Mitsuki gestured for Katsuki to come with her. She quickly looked over Katsuki and Izuku. Come on, Kat. We can take Izuku home today as well if you want. Just be good for me, okay? She was messing on her phone, not really paying attention to the boys. Izuku slowly put it together. Kaken's frequent apologies, the common bruises. Was Auntie Mitsuki doing it? Why would she? Was she like Daddy? I'm okay, Auntie, honest. Mama wants me to try walking home alone today. Mitsuki paused. She looked down at Izuku over the top of her phone. I don't think I'm willing to let you go home alone, Izuku. You might hurt yourself. Or get yourself kidnapped. Izuku giggled, I'm not gonna get kidnapped. I'm smarter than that. He grabbed Katsuki's hand. I'll go with you guys if Kaken wants though. He squeezed Kaken's hand lightly. Mitsuki slowly turned to Katsuki, waiting for his opinion. Katsuki scuffed his shoe in the dirt. I don't really care. He mumbled. Mitsuki frowned. Look up when you're speaking, do you not respect me? I thought I raised my son better. Mitsuki tossed her cigarette aside. Stomping it into the ground, she thought for a moment. Katsuki usually didn't act like this. Maybe Izuku was a bad influence. But he was so sweet around her. Mitsuki glanced over at Izuku's as he dragged Katsuki with them. Raising her hand, she ran it through her hair. Even if it was Izuku behind it, she would correct Katsuki's behavior. Mitsuki watched the two boys. Katsuki was being soft on Izuku, and Mitsuki realized what was happening. She bit back a small smile. Quickly calming herself down, Mitsuki sighed and pat Katsuki's head. She pushed his head into her leg, giving Kat a quick side hug. Maybe she should talk to him about relationships too. Learn some DMN manners, Kat, before you get yourself into trouble. Mitsuki ruffled Kaken's hair, musing it flat for a moment. I love you, Kei. Izuku jogged after them, then sat in the car. The stereo blared as Izuku and Kaken screamed along to their favorite songs. The car was filled with giggles, and the atmosphere was soft. Mitsuki dropped Izuku off outside his home. She ruffled his head. Then, gave him a sweet. Before driving her and Kat to their home. The first time it happened, Izuku was in school. The bell had just rang for free time. It was right before lunch. When his back started to hurt. Then it started to burn. Izuku tried to ignore it. To keep coloring in his coloring book. But it hurt so much. Later, Izuku went to the nurse. She said it was most likely growing pains, and gave him a heat pack to put on his back. Advising him to come back to her should the pain continue into tomorrow. The pain went away that night, after hours of tossing and turning. Izuku didn't want people to think he was exaggerating things, so he kept quiet. The pain went away. That's all that matters. Downplay it until no one was concerned. He was fine. Everything was fine. It was fine. Fine. The next time was in recess. Kaken got upset with Izuku over something or another and pushed him over. When he was pushed, Izuku expected to fall onto the soft grass. For Kaken to begin tickling him. For them to giggle like nothing happened. He wasn't expecting for his back to hit the ground, and to be unable to breathe. He wasn't expecting for his body to spasm from how much it hurt. He wasn't expecting Kaken to panic above him, shouting for a teacher. He wasn't expecting to be taken to the nurse's office. He wasn't expecting to cry when the teacher set him down onto the bed. He wasn't expecting for Mama to get called. He wasn't expecting to be unable to move. As the pain jolted throughout his chest and back. Nor for his mother to turn white once she saw him. Something inside Izuku snapped, and he zoned out. His body seemed detached from his mind. The pain was distant here. It felt nice. When his soul felt tethered to his body again. The walls were white. The bed was uncomfortable. There was something in his arm. Mama was there, she was talking to a doctor. The doctor didn't look worried, Mama looked calm too. There couldn't be anything wrong with Mama there. Izuku decided to sleep while he wasn't hurting. After that it just got worse and worse. Painkillers didn't seem to do anything, so Izuku stopped taking them. If Izuku was paying more attention, he would notice Mama putting painkillers in his food. He stopped complaining after the nurse told him he was faking it. His back hurt so much. It felt like something was trying to rip through his skin. Pressing against his ribs. The tension in his shoulders felt close to snapping. Mama had taken him to the doctor, after he had complained of the agony for a week or two. They hadn't found anything wrong. But had told Izuku to return should the pain grow. Izuku was in class when it happened. Red splotches had appeared on his back a few days before. They were on his shoulders, stretching out until his mid-back. The scars from Izuku's water boiler incident were more prominent now. All he felt was a stabbing pain as jagged tears appeared in his skin. The scream he had let out was horrible. The splitting sound as his body was forced open echoed through the room. Izuku sounded like he was being ripped apart from the inside out. All he could remember was blackness. Pain and agony raced through his back, and extra arms. Something new was there. Izuku didn't know what. He didn't care what. All he knew was that it hurt. It hurt so much. Make it stop. Please. Waking up in the hospital was not a fun thing to do. Especially when his body was both numb and screaming in pain. His limbs felt so heavy. His eyes wouldn't open, and his throat felt tight. Izuku didn't want to wake up again. Even less fun when there was screaming outside his room. Kaken's voice rang out, Mama's a close second with him. Was that Masaru there too? There was crying too. A shrill beeping lulled Izuku back to sleep. There was screaming. Why was there screaming? Maybe it was inside. Was he screaming? Maybe. His throat hurt. Izuku was just so tired. Why couldn't he just sleep? Sleep was nice. How dare yo dash, let me see my son. Quirks do not dash, large lacerations on dash, Izuku will be oh dash, freckle face, don't you dare die. Chapter 4 When Izuku awoke again, he was in immense pain. It felt like someone had carved 2 slits down the back of his back down to the bone. Izuku gasped as he spazzed in his bed. His body felt like pins and needles with the throbbing pain on his back. It was fair that he felt like someone tore his back through, down to the bone because someone did. Except that someone was him. Izuku was going to murder that beach because it hurt. As he was in the middle of plotting the murder of himself. Does that count as suicide? When the doctor walked in. They had pretty brown hair, and a bunny ear quirk. They had freckles like Izuku too. Ah, glad to see you're awake Midoriya-kun, would you mind if we did a few small tests on your new quirk? I understand if you say no, developing it in such a traumatic way could severely affect your mental health. Izuku snapped out of his self-murder plot. Yes. Oh. 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 What is it? Can I see it? Is it a mutation? Is there a doctor that can make it grow faster? Izuku shot off his questions, rapid fire. The doctor huffed a laugh behind their clipboard. Your new quirk seems to be wings. They're barely grown right now, the doctor looked through his notes. Their ears were relaxed, so Izuku didn't worry much. And you'll have to grow feathers by yourself. But we can check for other mutations later this week. Hopefully once your down feathers have grown in. The doctor clicked his pen and wrote down a note for himself. Izuku gasped in excitement, he flapped his hands with happy stims. Will I be able to shoot feather blades like the trainee hawks? Or that owl hero? Hooter. Izuku accidentally interrupted the doctor in his excitement, shooting off questions before developing into a quiet mumble. The doctor giggled at Izuku's excitement, before resuming their previous statement. We have training rooms for you to learn to fly in, but you'll have to ask your quirk counselor about it or anyone in your family with a wing quirk themselves. Izuku nodded slowly, trying to think of his family's quirks. I think my great-aunt had a bird quirk. She passed away, though. Grandma had a lucky quirk. Maybe it combined somehow. Izuku shrugged. I'll have to see later for it. What do I do if no one knows how to fly? Izuku worriedly asked, nibbling on his knuckle in his anxiety. The doctor nodded soothingly. Izuku got distracted by their ears again. We can give you a plan to learn to fly. It's slightly varied from person to person. Because of that, we can give you a safe place to learn while you're with us. The doctor smiled brightly at Izuku. It may not be the same as learning from family, seeing as we haven't yet had the time to bond. We do get some heroes in here to help sometimes. Even hawks will come in sometimes, to help teach you baby birds to fly. He looked down at the clipboard in his hands. Firstly, however, I need to ask a few questions. Then we can try and persuade the nurses to let you go fly a little early, okay? Dr. San winked at Izuku and grinned before fake whispering, not like they can really stop us if we sneak really quietly. Izuku giggled, his wings flapping slightly without him really thinking about it. They moved like his hands during happy stims. The doctor, however, did notice. They wrote about it on the clipboard he had. They tapped his pen lightly before glancing back up at Izuku, okay. So, any nausea, pain or discomfort on or around your new attachments? Any new hearing or sight sensitivities? Izuku paused and zoned out for a moment. He then shook his head before replying with a quieter voice. I have some pain in my back but my new wings don't hurt. The lights hurt a bit too. He started fiddling with his blanket. The doctor nodded before marking on his clipboard, do you know your emergency contact? I'm pretty sure it's Mama, I don't remember her actual name though. Izuku slumped forward and looked down sadly. Sorry. He fiddled with the blanket again. Dr. San simply smiled and said, no, it's quite alright. I'll just look in your file for that, not to worry. He glanced down, anyone with a quirk similar to yours in your family. I know you mentioned your great-aunt. Izuku hummed, tapping his fingers as he thought. No one other than her, that I can think of, Dr. San. Izuku shook his head. The doctor bumped their head with the palm of his hand, darn. I knew I was forgetting something. My name is Damashiku, but you can call me Isha. And there's no need for the San, it makes me sound old. Isha waved his hands around. Isha looked down at his clipboard again, I think that's all the questions we have to go through, you want to go look for any other new mutations? I don't remember if you asked about any of those. He looked through their notes again. You won't be able to fly until your quirk counselor puts together a plan for you. Isha noted down more notes for himself. We can answer any questions you have though, get a list of allergies you may have, as well as put together a new diet for you. They smiled calmly at Izuku. Isha helped Izuku from the hospital bed and set him on the ground before he ruffled the small boy's hair. All to help your wings be strong, huh kiddo? Isha smiled and Izuku felt safe. Izuku eagerly nodded. He felt dizzy after, having to hold out his arms to not fall. They walked down the hallways, Isha waving at a few other patients and doctors or nurses, before they finally got to a large pink door. Izuku was bouncing rapidly in place as Isha had to unlock the door and let him in. This is it, kiddo. He waved a hand out to show Izuku the multiple padded, seemingly playground, equipment. Isha smiled as Izuku began to happy stim again. This is where you will come to train your quirk once your guardian signs the paperwork. They pat Izuku's shoulder, before letting him explore a bit. Izuku was in shock. He took a few steps forward, whoa. He slowly spun around in a small circle. There was a yellow slide, a set of red swings and a few different sets of monkey bars. Izuku was amazed to see how almost every piece of equipment was able to intertwine with another. When he looked up, he saw tubes stretching over the ceiling. There were a few different windows in the tubes that allowed him to see inside. Izuku flapped his hands excitedly. Unable to stay still, he began tapping his fingers and counting to 4. He had a bright smile on his face, thinking about how he could play and learn about his quirk here. Isha chuckled, sorry you can't use anything yet bud, but first we need to see what all you can do. Isha gently ushered Izuku into a small testing area, around a 10 by 10 meter area. There were a few pillows in the room, as well as a sensory box. The whole room had a pastel color scheme. Stay in here and just try anything that feels natural. Just have some fun with it. Isha walked out of the container and watched from a window. Okay Midoriya-kun. Please, start. His clipboard was visible from the full-length window, their pen pressed lightly against the paper. Izuku giggled, then turned his neck as far as it could go. Only managing slightly more than the normal amount, unfortunately. It seemed he could only turn it around to look straight behind him. He stretched out his weirdly textured wings out behind him, the new skin pulling tight. Izuku would need to work on flexibility a bit later. They were around twice the length of his arms, with a joint in the middle. It seemed right around the same as a normal bird. But, again, he would have to look into it more later. After that, Izuku looked and thought about maybe talons. Like a hawk. He took off his grippy socks and didn't see anything different with his toes. Then he looked at his hands, and saw that his fingernails were slightly darker than normal. They were longer than before, too. The tips had elongated into small points at the edge, slightly curved towards new finger pads. When Izuku poked them they hurt a little bit. When he traced them on the ground, they lightly scored the mat flooring. Izuku jerked his hand away, before any extra damage was done, due to shock. Other than that there wasn't much. His eyes were slightly more vibrant, but that was about it. His hearing was also, weirdly strong. It felt weird. Izuku didn't know if he liked it or not. Izuku ran towards the window, bouncing again. He shoved his hands against the glass. This is so cool. I'll make such a great hero. Izuku chirped and cooed, Begor slapping his hand over his mouth. I didn't know I could do that. Isha laughed, jogging back into the room. It's totally normal, don't worry. Due to your new bird quirk, you'll have characteristics of other birds. Don't worry, you may grow out of it, but it's not healthy to repress them. So don't, unless you want to hinder your growth. They crouched to look Izuku in the eyes, trying to explain how serious repression was. Itchy. That's how Izuku would describe growing feathers. At the beginning, Izuku thought it was pretty cool. He would constantly poke the new spines of his feather, then giggle at the odd feeling. The nurses had explained to Izuku that the spines would later fan out into his down feathers. Later on in life, Izuku would molt and grow out his teenager adult feathers. Then he would be able to come back and learn about how to properly take care of his wings. Now though, with almost all of them ready to fan out, Izuku hated it. It itched, and at times it hurt. He just wanted it to be over already. He looked like a fluffy dark cloud. And some of his feathers were covered in dots. They would go away when he molted for his adult feathers. But for now, Izuku was stuck with polka dot wings. A few of the other kids giggled about it when Izuku explained. The nurses had to explain to Izuku that once his panaceous feathers grow in, he'd learn to fly. Those would be the feathers that laid over his down. The flight feathers, if you will. They would help keep his down dry. Also helping him catch lift from the wind. They explained that it would likely grow in a week after his downy. It was crucial that Izuku get all his needed nutrition during this time. Not having the right diet could, potentially, cripple his feather strength for years. Izuku didn't want that, but he also didn't want to eat the stupid soup in front of him. It was gross and slimy. It tasted bitter too. Izuku didn't like it. Izuku groaned as he begrudgingly ate it. The wet slimy feeling crawled down his throat. It coated his tongue, and felt grainy between his teeth. Eventually, Izuku settled for drinking it as fast as possible, then chomping down on some ice. It got rid of the feeling, and he liked the texture of the ice. The nurses began to simply bring Izuku cups of ice when he had to eat the more nutritional food. Izuku was glad that they understood and helped him get rid of the icky feeling. Isha helped Izuku learn how to work out his wings. Without immediately dying. Or breaking an arm. Izuku copied Isha as they hopped around. Izuku giggled when he hopped in a circle. Wings flapping so he got almost a foot off the ground. Oh my gosh. Isha-san. Did you see that? Did you see what I did? Isha clapped excitedly. That was amazing, Izuku-kun. You're progressing very quickly. Soon, we'll probably be able to hook you into the flight simulator. He ruffled Izuku's hair. Izuku now bounced when he walked. He tried to recreate how it felt when he was able to catch lift. He managed to do it a few more times, but not enough to get more than a foot off the ground. Isha agreed that they could try out Izuku flying sooner than expected. Izuku vibrated as Isha strapped him into the HRNSS. He would be hanging from something similar to a zip line. Izuku would have to flap his wings until he was at the higher platform. Then, he would slide down at a slow curve to learn drag. Hawks had been able to clear a day in his schedule. He'll be able to help Izuku learn today. Izuku tried not to feel too special about it. He was the only kid with a bird quirk in the hospital. At least, the only one now learning to fly. His quirk developed later than most bird quirks. Isha clipped the last buckle, then stepped back. Okay, Izuku-kun. Once you're ready, try to make it up to the next platform. If you can't get up there, it's absolutely okay. Don't beat yourself up about it. Izuku nodded quickly. Okay. I'm ready. He began to flap his wings, extending them fully. Izuku pushed his wings down, then pulled them up as straight as he could. He grinned when he began to actually move forward. It was really tiring, but he was able to get up to the next platform. Izuku pushed himself the last little but to the next platform. And then, he was on it. He flew for the first time. He made it. He jumped up and down with pride. Hawk-san clapped for Izuku, as well as Isha. Are you ready to try gliding or do you want to take a break? Hawk-san asked. Izuku looked over the edge of the platform. I want to try gliding. It doesn't look super difficult. Hawk-san nodded. Alright then. So what you're going to want to do is, Hawk-san began to explain how Isaac would need to curve his wings to glide. How drag worked, how momentum and conservation of energy worked. Izuku nodded understandingly as Hawk-san continued. Taking in the critic easily, and adjusting himself from there. You're going to want to have your wings fully Extended, not just halfway. Yeah, like that. Hawk-san moved out of Izuku's way, ready to try. Izuku nodded. He flared his wings out, cupped them slightly to catch the drag, then looked to Hawk-san for encouragement. Alright, little man. Let's do this. Hawk-san leaned forward, then began to glide off the platform. Izuku followed closely behind. He kept his wings open. The HRNSS helped keep him steady, but didn't infringe on his flying. Izuku began to panic as the ground began to speed towards him. Izuku raised his arms slightly from fear. How do I stop dash? Izuku called, just as he slammed into the mat. Izuku heard a loud snap, felt a flash of heat, and then nothing. When he woke up, his arm was in a cast. Hawk-san was in one of the uncomfortable hospital chairs. He was glancing at Izuku every few moments, while reading a book. Isha was checking over some paperwork. Mama was on her phone. Izuku hummed when Hawk-san looked up. Why re you here? He asked, his head tilted as he spoke. Mama jumped, then hurried over to Izuku. Hawk-san ruffled Izuku's hair. I wanted to make sure you were all right. It was my fault you got hurt. Izuku hummed. His mama calmly fluttered over him. He didn't want to get Hawk-san in trouble. Are you in trouble? Izuku watched Mama while she made sure he didn't have a concussion. Isha got up for a moment, exiting the room. Hawk-san waved his hand. Now. Isha-kun made sure of that. Don't be using honorifics with my name, I'm not that old. Isha's voice was heard from the hallway. Hawk-san snickered behind his hand. Izuku giggled a little bit too. Alright kid. I gotta get going now that you're awake. Call me sometime when you're a hero, okay? Izuku frowned but didn't push. He understood that Hawk-san was a hero. They were always busy. He waved goodbye as Hawk-san left though. Mama left soon after. She promised that Izuku would still continue his flight program, once his arm healed. Isha was able to check over Izuku for a moment, but left soon as well. He had to run down to the trauma ward for one of the other nurses. And he was left in that room. Alone, again. Chapter 5 Izuku got checked out of the hospital soon after. He was sad to no longer see Isha every day, but that couldn't be helped. Izuku wasn't going to dwell on it too much, he had a quirk that needed training. Going to his mom wouldn't work, she had too many responsibilities already. Izuku didn't want to be a burden. This was it. Izuku wasn't going to be helpless anymore. Right after dulling his nails though. They got on everything. The next few weeks were full of simple stretches. Izuku was able to convince Mama to sign him up for gymnastic classes. He was now fully able to fold his body practically in half. Backflips were still difficult due to his wings, but Izuku was progressing quickly. When Izuku's 10th birthday rolled around, he was able to creep out his friends by walking on his hands. He loved to just twist his body into a pretzel to pop one of his joints. Having loose ligaments helped a bit with that. It was fun. Izuku enjoyed putting on a show for Katsuki. Plus it helped Izuku make a schedule, and stay in shape. It would be useful when he became a hero. Izuku had picked up parkour sometime near his 11th birthday, and would constantly race with Katsuki through the mall. They may sometimes get in trouble, but it helped with their stamina. Being small and able to leap over tables made for an easy escape. Usually. Mostly. Kinda. Having wings sked in that aspect. However, because of how often the two boys liked to race, Izuku developed a bit of a reputation. The mall cops would give Izuku a side-eye anytime he went out with friends, usually just Katsuki. With his reputation, whenever future jobs came up, Izuku tended to stay quiet. Being a hero would be nice. But Izuku knew that wouldn't be possible. His mama drilled that into his head nearly every day. She didn't want him doing anything that could hurt him. Izuku knew a loophole though. Since he had a mutant quirk, he had a very limited quirk use card. And when Izuku had Googled the definition of a vigilante, the wording of the website stated, use of one's quirk to take justice into their own hands. Therefore, Izuku couldn't be a vigilante. With that thought in mind, Izuku wheeled his chair over to his closet. He frowned as he looked at his closet. He didn't really have very many clothes that he could tear and rip all the time. Mom wouldn't be willing to buy more for him if he asked so. Either Izuku would have to buy them himself. Or, see if the dumpster beach he passed by every time he went to school had some. They'd need to be darker too. Not pitch black but a darker color, like a navy blue. Or a maroon. Oh. Forest green could be Izuku's color scheme. With maybe light-up stripes. He'd have to buy glow-in-the-dark fabric paint for that though, and that shows up better on white fabrics. He could paint a bunch of white fabric green glow-in-the-dark and sew it onto his forest green other stuff. With maybe black highlights. Yeah, that would be cool. How would Izuku get the money for so many things though? And keep them from being tracked to him? Izuku fumbled through his morning as he thought. He might be able to sell the scrap at Takoba Beach. Wearing a face covering whenever he was buying this stuff would be good. Hiding his wings would be easy with hair dye, it would be temporary, but that meant Izuku could confuse people when his wings changed. Maybe it would be cool to get temporary spray hair dye to color his hair when he bought this stuff if he couldn't put them away. Or straighten his hair, metallic hair was in right now, right? That could be fun. Izuku might be able to make small things to help him. They had disassembled a radio in class the other day. It wouldn't be that hard, right? It could be cool to make something himself. Anything was possible with the internet. Izuku nodded. He needed to get some scrap, sell most of said scrap. Then buy some white fabric and green glow paint previous white fabric to where it's a bright green. Then learn to sew, and sew it to the rest of the clothes he's inevitably going to get after selling scrap. Maybe getting a job would be good too. Being a minor SCKED in that aspect, as he couldn't legally work until he was so. 3-ish more years to go. Izuku nodded to himself again as he grabbed a notebook and wrote that down. Careful of his still sharp nails, Izuku managed to only get 2 scratches on his paper. He needed to trim them again soon. First matter of business, however, was sleep. Izuku glanced at the clock and saw it read 12 a.m. Panicked, he pushed all of his stuff back into its proper spots and rushed to bed. At exactly 12:30, Inko crept outside of his room, pausing for a moment, before continuing on. Izuku sighed in relief and felt the tension release from his body. Exhaustion slapped him across the face, sending him to sleep almost immediately. When Izuku woke the next morning, he got to work. Hiding his laptop in his school bag, along with a change of clothes, Izuku rushed to hide himself. As he slid behind the desk in his room, Inko came in. Stupid effin' kid, she mumbled. Rummaging around, Mama seemed to be looking for something. Once she didn't immediately find it, she quickly gave up and left. Izuku quickly jumped out from under his bed and continued getting ready for the day, snatching up some food he had smuggled into his room and changing into clean clothes. Technically they were clean, at the very least. Bolting from the house he ran to school. Trying to arrive before he was late, just hoping he wouldn't get another tardy on his record. He couldn't afford any more detention. Nothing unusual happened that school day. A few people insulted his very existence, but what can you do? That's just how it be sometimes. Kaken helped keep most of the physical bullying at bay, anyways. Izuku scavenged around after school, looking for large piles of garbage no one would miss. There was a small one near the elementary school. That would need to be cleaned up. That was not okay near children. Especially the smaller ones. There was another large one on Takoba Beach that needed to be cleaned up soon too. It was polluting the water and killing the fish in it too. No one was swimming at the once appealing beach. Izuku knew the rubbish was making many people who used to visit the sea sad. Izuku nodded to himself again. He grabbed a small notebook from his pocket, to jot down his thoughts quickly. Izuku began designing a plan to clean the small pile of rubbish next to the elementary school. He climbed around for a bit, seeing many large pieces. He would need to clean up the smaller things before he could move the larger items. Izuku frowned at the pile of trash as he gasped for breath. Even with a plan, this was taking a while. He had been at this for a week and there wasn't even a dent in the trash. He had found some cool things, a small bike that was dented, some roller skates with a busted wheel, even a computer. He had been able to make a deal with the local scrap pie. Reni-san would buy the scrape Izuku had, in exchange for him cleaning up the front of her shop. Sweeping, taking care of the plants. Simple things. She paid Izuku for his work, of course. Izuku knew Reni-san was paying him too much, though. She had said that if Izuku needed a truck for the older things, Reni-san would be willing to do so in exchange for the scrap. Izuku found it odd but didn't comment. Izuku made a thin trail halfway through the trash by the third week. There was a large amount of trash he wouldn't be able to sell. So, he would just recycle what he could, wash and donate what he could. Then throw away the rest in its proper place. Maybe Reni-san would help him out with that. She might be able to find more sellable scrap, that would require Izuku having to ask her though. And that wasn't a very fun idea. There were a few people that would pause what they were doing to start staring at Izuku. There were a few people that would join in with him, but most of the time the people stayed as eyes burned into his skin. Izuku didn't enjoy being stared at by random people, but this needed to be taken care of before some kid gets hurt. Izuku cut his hand on some rusty metal as he finished his thought. This place needed to be cleaned sooner rather than later. Thank goodness I'm doing it. Izuku quickly grabbed some hydrogen peroxide, rinsing his hand with it. Then he grabbed a roll of gauze and wrapped his hand. He took a small piece of medical tape and tacked the gauze down. It would have to do until he could get home. It would be fine. Mom could look at it if Izuku was really concerned. Another week went by as Izuku continued to work on cleaning the trash. He was making a fairly large amount of progress. Nearly a quarter was removed by this point. Thanks to his overachiever attitude, along with all the nights he couldn't sleep. Insomnia SCKS but like that. Izuku dusted his dirty hands off on his shorts as he overlooked the leftover trash. He could probably sell the scrap he had collected today. Maybe get a few yen. He needed the cash, Mama was so busy with work. Izuku didn't want to be a burden by making her feed him too. His allowance would go to school lunches, though a few bullies always stole it. Izuku shuddered as his wings tightened around his sides. Better his food than his body, right? As he grabbed the handle of a slightly rusted wagon, Izuku dragged it around. Piling a few broken computers, a toaster, and for some reason a phone. Izuku had checked to see if it worked, and it had water damage so, no. He then walked down to the sweet old Scrappy. Reni-san was too sweet on Izuku, he knew he probably didn't deserve it. It didn't hurt to pretend though. Pulling his rusted wagon next to him, Izuku pondered how much he could get for this. Probably not very much, there was gold and copper in the computers though. Reni-san was sure to give him a little extra though. Maybe he could buy some non-perishable snacks to keep in his room. All in all, probably more yen than last time. Izuku's wings fluttered at the thought of not having to ask Kaken for some food. This was it. Izuku wouldn't be a burden. Ah, Izuku-kun. Reni-san's gravelly voice greeted him as he walked in. Izuku waved and pulled up the last little ways to the counter to show her what he had this time. Some quality broken stuff, where do ya keep getting this at kiddo? Izuku smiled, going to pat down his pockets for his notepad. Reni-san calmly handed him a new one as she looked through his cart. Scribbling down where the school was, Izuku explained that he was cleaning it up, so no one got hurt in it. The cash was an added bonus. Selling scrap was tiring, but he needed the food. Izuku refused to be a burden. Reni-san gave him around 2,000 yen for what he brought in. Ruffling his hair before she let Izuku leave. "When you're done selling scrape, sell me that wagon too, would ya?" She grinned at him and finally let the little one go. "Come on by tomorrow and I'll give you something special, Kei." Izuku smiled and nodded. Going home today was more draining than working with less than 2 hours of sleep. He knew Mama would be home and it wasn't something Izuku wanted to go through. His wings nearly dragged on the ground as the almost 12-year-old gently opened his front door. Cautiously, he peeked his head inside. Then Izuku snuck into his room. He didn't plan on staying long. Certainly trying not to get caught by Mama. She thought he had been quietly playing in his room. Izuku didn't want her to find out he had been working. She might feel bad, and then Izuku would feel bad. Izuku dropped off the green shard that he swore wasn't in his pocket this morning. He then grabbed a change of clothes, a hoodie, an extra jacket, and a med kit. He couldn't stay here tonight, Mama wanted a chance to relax. Izuku couldn't ruin that for her. Izuku heard the front door shut. He heard Mama's shoes hit the floor. Then sounds of her jacket and keys as they were put up. Izuku shoved his necessaries into his bag, along with a small amount of cash. Izuku shoved the window open. As he cringed at the noise, he shoved his bag out and jumped out after. His wings pulled uncomfortably when he got stuck. When Izuku brushed off the twigs and dirt from his clothes, he flapped his wings to get rid of the dust. When he heard his window shut, he cringed at the noise of it. He didn't want to start to move again yet. He brushed at his clothes a bit more. Now deciding that he didn't have any more dirt on him, Izuku started for a worse neighborhood. He couldn't get caught while out. Mama might be called. She didn't need that. Izuku silently ducked into an alleyway, he tossed on a hoodie, shoving his wings into it. He then wrapped them around his front to try to make it as flat as possible. After that he shoved his hair into a ponytail and under his hood. Making sure his face mask was fully in place, Izuku deemed himself mostly unrecognizable. He would be fine. Probably. The green-haired boy looked around for some way to get up onto the roofs. Once he spotted a fire escape a little ways off, it was perfect. He climbed up and took a running start to hop over the rooftop's gate. When he pulled himself up, Izuku just sat on the edge for a minute. Contemplating what he could do now. He could parkour around a small bit. Maybe try to stalk Eraserhead again. He could even try out that vigilante idea he had while ago. Izuku huffed out a laugh, yeah. He'd do that. Maybe he wouldn't have to face tomorrow if he was killed. Izuku frowned, then shook his head, he couldn't do that to Mama and Cat. Cat needed a support system. Izuku was the only person that Katsuki was actually friends with. Mama loved him, so she would be sad if he died. RIGHT. Izuku stood up. He reached as high as he could with his arms. Then took off his hoodie and shook out his wings. When he looked around carefully, he didn't see anyone. So, Izuku jumped onto the next building. Flapping his wings to keep from falling. Izuku started to run, he enjoyed the feeling that came with it. The freedom, and no thought beyond putting one foot in front of the other. He ran until he was out of breath and his wings began to ache. He continued on even after that. Izuku only stopped when he heard a scream. A scream that echoed loudly in the alleyways. Izuku's wings were extremely agitated by this point. The speed he had been going was faster than normal. As Izuku turned in the direction of the scream, he began to glide over the rooftops. He blended in well with his practically black wings. When Izuku got closer to where he heard the first scream, another one rang out. He stopped on the edge of the roof he was on to peer into the alleyway. It looked like a mugging, a mutant type was trying to get something. They had a knife against an emitter type. Izuku nodded slowly, looking around he saw a sturdy pipe. It was laying so that it seemed to have fallen off of something. He picked it up, and grinned at the weight. Izuku quietly jumped into the alleyway, slamming the pipe onto the mugger's shoulder. He cringed at the angle it was at, but no undoing it now. He then tried to hit them over the head, but couldn't reach that far. As he missed, they turned around. Izuku received a sucker punch to the stomach that had him coughing. Then a fist to his face, nearly breaking his nose. At that moment, Izuku cursed his natural reaction. Channeling his fear into anger, Izuku nearly snarled. He lashed out and stomped on the person's toes. The emitter person had already hopefully gotten away, they had hopefully called the police. Hopefully. Izuku needed to get this over with now. He couldn't risk to rely on a hopefully. When he finally blinked the tears out of his eyes, Izuku looked at the person in front of him for a moment, before grabbing his pipe and bringing it down on their head. F that guy. BSTRD hit a child. Izuku heard the sirens, after the sharp crack of the metal connecting with their head. He snapped out of the rage his mind had been captive in. Izuku bolted, running out of the alleyway. He ran in zigzags to make sure no one would be able to tag him. Izuku ran fast and hard, until he was out of breath and his body hurt. He slowed to a halt, hands on his knees, and he breathed. Finally he was able to admit he was safe. Izuku didn't really know where he was, and the sun looked near about ready to rise. Why was he always alone? Chapter 6. Izuku carefully put the wires back into the radio box. He'd reconnected them, according to the YouTube video he was watching. He started to screw in the tiny screws, making sure to correctly place all of them. Maybe he could show it to Reni-san. She might like it. Izuku hummed once he finished putting in the screws. He then pushed the radio away, switching to something else to focus on. The more detail-oriented work of jewelry always appealed to Izuku. He had bought a few thin chains from Reni-san the other day. Trying that out tonight sounded like a good idea. Izuku, sweetie. Mommy needs you to come out for a bit. You left dirty dishes in the sink. That was very naughty of you, Izuku. Inko cooed through the small boy's door. Izuku didn't pay much attention though, he was carefully putting together a bracelet. It was decorated with little pieces of sea grass. Reni-san thought Izuku could make appealing things, and he wanted to give her something. If Izuku found enough of those randomly appearing shards, maybe he could do the same with them. Kaken thought they were a part of his quirk. Izuku thought it was lame, if not a little weird. Why would crow wings make little green shards? They always seem to disappear though. Mama's voice called for Izuku to open his door again. She threatened to go get the skeleton key, and Izuku's head shot up. He shoved the brace into a small cardboard box. He then hid the box, and while doing so, he heard the doorknob start rattling. Come out, Izuku. Naughty boys need to be punished. Don't you want to be good? Mama's voice started to sound watery. Izuku heard two thunk sounds outside of his room. The sound of crying echoing throughout the hallway. Izuku didn't want to go comfort her. Did that make him a bad son? Since he didn't want to go help his mama. It would probably be better if she didn't have a son like him. Izuku scrambled to hide from mama, quickly packing an overnight bag. He shoved the window open. Cringing at the forever loud noise, Izuku shoved his stuff out of it. His wings nearly caught on the window again in his rush. Izuku started to jog. His backpack hit against his wings with every jolt. The low ache was enough to ground him slightly as he ran. He shut off his thoughts, and just jogged for a bit. When Izuku zoned back in again, he was safe. He was standing on what appeared to be on a building's roof. Izuku looked over the edge for a bit. It was plausible that, if he were to fall, he would most likely die. That wasn't a fun thought. It did make some sense, though. Mama was sad because of Izuku. Daddy turned mean, and was in prison because of Izuku. Everything went wrong in Izuku's life, because of Izuku. He must be the problem. Would it be a good idea to kill himself at this point? Leaning over again, Izuku felt his wings puff up in fear and adrenaline. The thought of him probably being able to fly here without being in trouble was. He really wanted to do it. HECULDALSOJUMP. NOMORE PIN. JUSTTHFLNGOFFLNG. ALLOFIT But he could get his mama in trouble by alerting people to where he was. When Izuku started to lean a little too far, he heard footsteps behind him. Quiet. Like they didn't want to be heard yet, but loud enough to not cause too much suspicion. Should someone notice them? Izuku barely turned to look at his visitor. He glanced back, easily learned that it was a hero, as he had expected. Waving a bit jerkily, he looked back to the edge. His feet weren't blocked by a barrier. No fencing, or anything. What's a kid doing up here? A gruff voice asked, somehow having more concern for Izuku than Izuku had for himself. Izuku didn't know how to respond. Eventually, he shrugged before a vague gesture at the evening city. His wings were ruffled enough to hide his entire figure. Izuku didn't turn around, but he did speak. His voice. Ragged from little use, just enjoying the view. He held out a few of the vowels a small bit more than normal. The cold air caused his stutter to perk up again. That was annoying. He couldn't even talk right. The man's voice was warm as he spoke. That doesn't quite seem like that's all it is. The sound of footsteps echoed on the pavement. Izuku shrugged. I guess that's your fault for reading into it. He leaned forward and let gravity take hold. He heard a small shout from the hero, the whistling of air, then nothing. As a story or two passed his head, he calmly angled his body. Then spread his still very ruffled feathers. Izuku shoved his face into his hands. Oh my god, I can't believe I talked to Eraserhead, oh my god. His flustered words were lost to the wind. The now flustered and extremely embarrassed Izuku covered his red face as he glided over the city. Soaring as high as he could, before oxygen deprivation became an issue. Izuku tucked his wings in and went for a small dive. He let the wind cut sharply on his skin. Felt the adrenaline pump through his body. Felt the automatic tears in his eyes evaporate before they could even fall. Here. Here he was free. Here he could soar and not worry about anything else. Not even bugs could touch Izuku here. It felt amazing. For as long as it lasted. All good things had to come to an end. The sun was rising as Izuku gleefully flapped his wings, gliding back up. Spinning in loops, or just in general as he relaxed. Tension he hadn't realized he'd gained melted away. Just as Izuku was looking for a building to land on, he got a call from Kaken. Kaken's voice sounded odd through the phone. Get your feathered butt out of the sky before I blow it up. The threat felt familiar, him having said it multiple times to Izuku before. It was always in good fun, never actually being serious. Katsuki knew that fire made Izuku nervous. When Izuku finally decided to look down, he saw Kaken staring up at him in the middle of a park. So, Izuku did the only smart thing he could think of. He tucked his wings in and dove at his friend. Katsuki let out a very manly screech as he tried to run away from Izuku. He wasn't fast enough. Izuku easily caught the blonde beach. He decided it would be the most fun if he just streamed upwards, into the clouds. Katsuki screamed swears at Izuku the entire time. Katsuki grabbed onto Izuku's arms. Izuku, you piece of SHT, put me down, you butt. I'm not meant for the sky. I belong on the ground, where I can't die. Izuku began to fly higher. Holding onto Kat so he wouldn't fall. What the F? Why are we going higher? Stop it. F you. I'll F stab your parents. Katsuki wouldn't stop. Screaming. So Izuku did the reasonable thing, as any kid would do. He dropped him. Izuku grabbed him after not even half a second. After throwing him up slightly, Izuku grabbed Kaken's biceps for a few seconds. Holding onto Katsuki's arms, Izuku flew even higher than before. Katsuki, seeming to not have learned his lesson, screamed even louder. Izuku dropped him again, letting him fall for barely 3 seconds this time. Izuku kept in mind terminal velocity, how close Katsuki was to the ground, his possibility of hitting anything midair. Then Izuku tucked in his wings, and dived for his idiot. When they got back up to above the buildings, Izuku shouted over the wind and Katsuki screaming, "Can you stop screaming now?" He laughed at Katsuki's angry red face as he looked up at him. "Come on, that was funny." Katsuki glared at the ground. When he spoke, his voice was shaky. "No. Put me down." Izuku felt his eyes widen, and his skin go pale. Katsuki, his best friend, was crying. Because of Izuku. Immediately, Izuku went to the ground, gently setting down Kat before landing next to him. He fluttered around Kat for a moment, grabbing his hand in Izuku's panic. Kat had more tears dripping down his face. His cheeks and ears flushed with red. Izuku could feel his hand shaking. Izuku placed Kat's hand against his chest. Taking deep, slow breaths, Izuku was able to get Katsuki to calm down. Once Kat was fully calmed down, he started to giggle. Okay. It was a little funny. And it was funny. At least a little bit. In retrospect. But only after Kat was on the ground. And Izuku had gotten a few hits for dropping him. Izuku and Kat walked through the park for a bit. They didn't want a repeat of what just happened, so they decided to walk. Eventually Katsuki reached into one of his pockets, and handed Izuku something. "I remember that you said the sun was starting to bother you more, since you started working in the night. And I know that even without that, your eyes tend to hurt more with bright lights. So, I got you some prescription sunglasses." Katsuki rubbed the back of his neck as he spoke, trying to still sound confident as the silence grew. Izuku stared at the sunglasses, a small grin growing on his face. "I love you so much." He glanced up at Kat, a light blush growing on his cheeks. Katsuki flustered, stumbling over his words. Izuku felt his face go pink, fumbling to save his friendship. Izuku flapped his hands around a small bit. As a friend. You know, like how those girls we're friends with always say I love you dash. He tugged on the back of his hair, then tugged some of the front into his face. "I'm so sorry for making this awkward. Forget I said anything." Katsuki ruffled Izuku's hair. "Don't worry about it, Izuku. Love you too." Izuku smiled, as he slipped on the sunglasses. "Thank you, Kat." Izuku waved as Katsuki walked away, leaving him alone. Did he have to be alone? Izuku jogged up with Katsuki. "Mind if I walk with you?" Kat ruffled Izuku's hair again. "Nope. Come on, freckle face. Let's go home." He hung his arm over Izuku's shoulders. Yeah. It was nice to not have to be alone. Chapter 7 Everything. Hurt. Izuku had grown used to it now. It never seemed to stop. Old pains burned, sometimes it felt like Izuku's bones were being crushed. Why would the pain stop for Izuku? Surely he had done something wrong in his past life. Kaken was Izuku's only friend. Everyone else hurt him. Why did it hurt? Izuku still tried to help them. They'd lash out at him. He knew they would. It still hurt when they did it though. He was a freak. A dumb, barely quirked kid. He deserved everything that life gave him. He barely counted as a vigilante. He had gone out a handful of times. Each time, getting more injured than his opponents. Hell. The victims would be better at defending themselves than Izuku. Izuku stared up at the sky. He could feel the cuts from last night's villain bleeding. The bruises from today's bully were unfortunately close to other injuries. Izuku felt his joints grinding together whenever he moved. It was awful. Izuku's wings were stretched out on the ground. The dirt irritated Izuku's skin, but he didn't care right now. Kaken wouldn't look for him for maybe another 10 minutes. He could deal with the pain until then. What was a few more minutes of pain when everything hurt? What did Izuku do to deserve this? Why did that kid have to turn on Izuku after the bullies went away? Katsuki came over to Izuku's prone form, gently helping him up and bandaging his small scrapes as Izuku thought. He brushed the dirt out of Izuku's wings. Izuku only zoned back in after Katsuki repeated his question for a third time. Kat snapped his fingers in front of Izuku's eyes a few times. Izuku. When was the last time you ate? Izuku blinked a few times, his eyes refocusing. Why are you asking? Izuku gave Katsuki a side eye. His limbs were still spread on the ground. It was mostly comfortable. Izuku didn't want to move. When he sat next to Izuku, Katsuki huffed. Don't avoid the question. He flicked Izuku's forehead. Izuku huffed. I'm not avoiding the question. He stuck his tongue out at Katsuki. Then pushed himself to sit up. Kat hummed. He let his head fall to the left, you're not getting out of eating. He gently pressed an onigiri to Izuku's lips. Eat. Izuku pouted but took a small bite. Happy. He wilted slightly when Kat gave him a pointed look. You know I don't like eating food meant for you. Kat sighed fondly. Luckily for you, I packed extra knowing you'd forget to bring some. He packed the extra food because he cares, Izuku. He pressed the onigiri to Izuku's lips again. Now, then. Eat. Izuku sighed, but continued to eat. He enjoyed being taken care of. Kat was really sweet. Like a Kit Kat. Izuku just walked home after that. Once he got home, he hopped through his window. Grabbed a face mask, a hoodie, and a different pair of briefs. Izuku wanted to run around for a bit. Maybe fly. It wasn't like the school could call Mama. Izuku changed the records for her phone number. They couldn't bother her now, when Izuku got into a fight. Izuku was on the rooftops now. When did he get here? He wandered over the rooftops. Izuku didn't see much crime right now. He decided that it would be alright to stop for a moment. He sat on the edge of a building for a moment. Thinking as he kicked his legs. Izuku thought about his quote-unquote vigilante career. His wings drooped until they were laying on the rooftop when he thought about becoming a hero. It wasn't possible. He was just a nobody. Izuku shook his head, and returned to his previous train of thought. Izuku had made a quick name for himself. Even if he couldn't go into a fight without getting hurt. At least a little bit. He was getting better though. He hadn't started bleeding the last time he went out, so that was something. Nightwalker sounded pretty cool. Until Izuku remembered why the police called him that. A night walker. So original. Izuku rolled his eyes. Izuku thought a little bit more. He hopped up. Then adjusted himself into a fighting stance. Izuku could practice his punches for a bit, before he went looking around again. If Izuku continued selling scrap at the rate he was going now, he would probably be able to construct an actual uniform for himself. Maybe even some gadgets to fiddle with during school, so he wasn't always bored. Taking things apart was fun. Izuku didn't worry much when he heard footsteps behind him. The crunch of gravel was muted. So they were probably trying to stay unseen. Izuku could respect that. When Aizawa had woken up today, he hadn't expected to see another child on a rooftop. Let alone the same one as before. The kid was practicing punching the air. Their body was too far forward, stance too wide. If they actually got into a fight, the kid would come out of it hurt more than their opponent. Aizawa frowned when he saw the sloppy punch. He stepped forward so the kid could see him. You should keep your feet closer together. Being too wide is asking to get knocked to the ground. Aizawa felt slightly guilty when the kid nearly jumped a foot in the air. Aizawa stepped closer to the kid. He raised his arms, turning to show the kid how to protect his ribs. Your elbows need to stay close to your chest. If you don't protect your ribs, you can get seriously hurt. First rule in a street fight. The kid slowly nodded. Then corrected himself to Aizawa's stance. Aizawa took a step forward to help them, but paused when he flinched. Aizawa pointed at his left arm. Bring your left arm closer to your chest, it's meant to protect you. Not to just be hanging out. The kid snorted at that. Twist your torso, bend your knees. Aizawa showed him again. Throw a punch at me. Aizawa said, standing in front of the kid now. He looked confused but did as such. Don't tuck your thumb in like that. You'll break it. Easily. Curl it like you normally would, but slightly lower. Aizawa tucked his thumb under his index finger. He then showed the kid, if I hit anything, I'll either pop my thumb out of its joint, or I'll break it. You don't want that in the middle of a fight. Aizawa showed him correctly, this time, then got back into his stance. Try again. The kid shot out, managing to hit Aizawa's arm. He went out too wide, still unable to use the energy in the movement. Let your wrist twist when you're punching, don't make it stay completely straight. Your body has a natural line of energy. Use it. Leaning your weight into a punch makes it harder too. Aizawa gently fixed the kid's form, being careful of his wings. Before showing him a proper punch. Don't swing out, I'll nail you in the ribs. Jab mostly forward. If you fall, go with it. Bringing his hand back to his chest, Aizawa looked back down at the kid. Keep your hands near your nose. If someone hits it, your eyes will water. A lot. You can't afford to be blind. Not when you don't have experience fighting blind. Especially in a street fight. And relax your stance. The only reason you should be tense is if you're going to take the beating. Tense to protect your internal organs, but do not do so during a fight. You'll just get more hurt. Aizawa showed Izuku his form again. Bend your knees, raise your arms more. Do the stupid bouncing from side to side thing that video game characters do. It'll help keep your balance. The kid nodded, bouncing on his feet in excitement. It sounded as though he were quietly tweeting. Aizawa wasn't about to ask. It didn't seem like the kid was about to do it any louder. Aizawa got back into stance again. Kick me. He nodded when the kid eyed him distrustfully. Go on. You're not going to hurt me. The kid slowly nodded, then aimed a fast kick to Aizawa's chest. Aizawa caught the leg with little to no fanfare. He jerked the kid's leg, but grabbed his arm before he fell. Aizawa helped the kid get balanced for a moment. If you're kicking someone, and your leg gets caught like that, drop your weight and swing the other leg. Similarly, if someone kicks you, do exactly what I just did. Pull them off their feet, then knock them out if you have to. The kid nodded. He got into stance, then shot a kick out at Aizawa again. Not pausing this time when he caught his leg this time. He dropped his weight then slung his other leg. Aizawa stumbled from the sudden weight, barely able to block his other leg. He dropped the kid's leg in shock. Then he got a wing to the face. The kid caught himself on his hands, then calmly fell onto his feet. Aizawa stumbled and laughed. He held out a hand to the kid. That was smart. Use your quirk when you need to. I wasn't expecting you to slap me with your wing. Aizawa let his proud smile grow. The kid grasped Aizawa's hand and pulled himself up. If you can startle an opponent like that again, try and get their feet out from under them. The kid pumped his fist in victory. Aizawa smiled down at them. There's no honor in a street fight. Use your body and environment. Throw dirt in your opponent's eyes. Smack them with a pipe. Honor means SHT when you're dead. Aizawa held up a finger when his radio crackled to life. Aizawa waved goodbye to the kid as he got radioed from his earpiece. Yeah, I can be there. Aizawa waved at the kid as he walked away. He shot his scarves out, then launched himself into the alleyway. Running. Over the buildings they were by. Izuku watched him go, before practicing his punches some more. He couldn't afford to be caught off guard by a villain again. When Izuku was satisfied with the burn in his muscles, he climbed down the building. Intent on going home. Eraserhead was cool and all. Izuku just didn't want to be seen again. Izuku noticed a shadow following him. He had turned around multiple corners, yet they wouldn't leave. Izuku took a chance. He shot into an alley, then turned to face his stalker. Only to see a woman. She had large fish eyes, fins for ears. Freckles dotted her face. Her fingers looked like there was webbing between them. And her limbs had fins as well. Angled downward for easy swimming. Hello. She said, you're the new vigilante that's been going around. Nightwalker, right. Izuku cursed himself. She was likely a villain, and he had just cornered himself. Maybe he could fly away. Only if he got a running start though. However, Izuku didn't want to get closer to her. Hesitantly, he nodded. The woman clapped her hands together. Perfect. I knew I could count on Hazel. Now then, I'm involved in some less than legal business. There's been some gossip in the grapevine. Something about kidnapping a child. The woman stared down at Izuku. She pulled a slip of paper from her pocket. I have an address, and I have a few people there. In case anything gets nasty. But I need someone not involved with us to take care of the kid. Can I count on you to help? The woman held a hand out towards Izuku. Izuku tilted his head. He hummed as he thought. The woman took a step backward. She grabbed her phone from her pocket. Typed a few things in, then she addressed Izuku again. I'm more than willing to make it worth your while. She held out her phone to Izuku. Kids don't deserve to suffer. Izuku slowly stepped forward. He felt his eyes widen at the amount of money on the screen. That was enough to buy food for at least a month. With enough left over to buy all of Izuku's vigilante costume outright. Izuku thought about it more. He could go and do it by himself. Stay out of contact with potential criminals. Or he could shake her hand, and get the much-needed money. Plus being able to help more people. Izuku nodded, a determined look on his face. He shook the woman's hand. Okay. Where do I need to go? The woman took pause at how young Izuku sounded. Holy SHT. You're a kid too. Oh my god. Did Hazel know? Oh god. She shook her head. You're okay. It's obvious you're doing this for a reason. My name is Annie. She held up a hand when Izuku was about to introduce himself to her. Don't. I want you to have an out. Should the police trace you to me? The address is a restaurant, so grab yourself something to eat. She handed Izuku an envelope. Izuku nodded. Annie then handed Izuku the slip of paper. She also handed Izuku an extra phone from a new pocket. Izuku stared at the phone. How many pockets do you have? He slipped it into his pocket, watching Annie. Annie huffed a laugh, not enough. She waved at Izuku as she walked away. See you around, little hero. Izuku crouched on the edge of the building. He had followed the directions that Annie had given him. Now, he just had to wait. He didn't have to wait long, unfortunately. A burly man with red hair practically dragged a kid in. The kid's movements were jerky. Almost robotic. His hair reminded Izuku of a peppermint. Maybe he was just hungry. Running around all night then not eating for 6 hours would do that. Izuku had grabbed an energy drink from the store earlier. He opened the can and began to chug it. Izuku almost choked on his drink when he realized the man had been Endeavor. That meant the kid that he was dragging was the kidnapped kid. Oh no. Izuku was gonna be sick. He needed to help the peppermint boy, without getting barbecued. Izuku took a deep breath. Steeled his nerves. And hopped off the building using his wings for drag. Shudo stared at Enji. Enji stared back. Shudo reached for a menu. Enji did the same. Why is it so awkward, Enji? Maybe it's because you kidnapped a child. Then made them eat with you. Are you going to do the whole, critique everything I do bit again? It wasn't funny the first time. It's not going to be the 47th time either. Shudo stood up, I'm going to go use the washroom. He glared at Endeavor while he turned to leave. Unless you're going to kidnap me again. Shudo ignored any response Endeavor might have, and left with his head held high. He opened the door, and looked around for a moment. No one else was in the room. Shudo laid his head down on the sink. God, I hate this. He mumbled into his arm. A green head of hair came into view. That's understandable. Being kidnapped isn't fun. Shudo froze. He slowly raised his head to stare at the person. How did you know that? The person was wearing a black face mask, a long-sleeved CRP top, and wide shorts with layered lace cutouts. They looked more feminine than Shudo expected from their voice. The green-haired kid hummed. Then held a wing up, a little birdie told me. They snorted, that was such a bad joke, I'm so sorry. Forgive me, I should have been asleep 14 hours ago. The kid covered their mouth to muffle their giggles. How long have you been awake? Shudo tilted his head slightly. I plead the 5th. The kid started to giggle harder. We're in Japan. Shudo started to giggle along. Their giggles were contagious. The kid took a deep breath, trying to calm themselves. Okay. I'm here to, he started giggling again. I had a whole speech planned. Oh my god. The boy held up his hands, hold on, let me restart. Shudo started to laugh outright. The kid laughed with him, stop. I'm supposed to be serious dash. Shudo held his breath to stop laughing. And immediately started to giggle again. Okay. Shudo took a deep breath. Okay, try again. I won't laugh now. The kid grinned, alright. Take 2. Hi, I go by Nightwalker, him please. Someone sent me to help you. She thinks kids don't deserve to suffer, and I'm inclined to agree with her. The kid, Nightwalker dash. Winked at Shudo. Chapter 8. He held out a hand. I need you to work with me though. When you get back to your table, order a large water. Wait 5 minutes, and dump it on Endeavor's head. Then run to the front of the restaurant. Shudo nodded slowly. Todoroki Shudo. He shook Nightwalker's hand. How is that going to help? All it would do was make Endeavor mad. He ran a hand through his hair, grimacing when he caught a knot. Nightwalker pulled a pair of green-tinted sunglasses out of his pocket. He took off his face mask, and slid them on. Leave that to me, pretty boy. All you need to do is be ready to run. Shudo nodded. He then splashed some water on his face, and got up to leave. Thank you. Nightwalker nodded to Shudo. When Shudo got back to his table, he ordered the water. The silence was stifling. When the water finally arrived, Shudo calmly stood up. took a sip of his water. Then dumped the water on Enji's head. Instantly, a large burst of steam partially blocked Shudo's sight. Shudo bolted as fast as he could to the front of the room. The green boy from earlier was there. He held a discreet bag now. He cupped his hands over his mouth and shouted, "Fire!" causing a panic as people stood to leave. He turned to Shudo, "Come on, let's go." Nightwalker grabbed Shudo's arm, and they bolted. Shudo was now attempting to not die of laughter. What dash? What do we do now dash? Shudo couldn't hold in the laughter at that point. He laughed and wheezed as he tried to not fall over. "I don't know, I didn't think this far." Nightwalker looked back at Shudo. He noticed how Shudo stumbled every other step. Izuku shrugged and just picked him up. "What do you mean you didn't think this far? Endeavor is gonna kill me." Shudo was completely red by this point. I'll fly us outta here." Nightwalker helped plant Shudo onto his feet. "I have to get up first, then I'll grab you." Shudo breathed heavily. Nightwalker stepped back a few steps then ran forward. "That's the dumbest plan I've ever heard of. Do you have a better one?" Izuku looked down at Shudo as he shook his head. "I didn't think so. Now hold on." Nightwalker flew over the peppermint boy and grabbed his wrists. Grab me." Shudo did so. Either out of desperation, or something else. But it worked and they were moving on. Nightwalker was clearly not ready for how heavy Shudo would be. He had to flap his wings twice as hard as he would before. Instead of just gliding through the air. "The F are you made of?" "Bricks." Shudo nearly laughed again. Nightwalker got them safely above a building. Right before an accidental crash landing. He dropped Shudo to safety before tumbling. He rolled onto his side, then dry heaved from the amount of effort that took. Izuku groaned at the feeling of old cuts being retorn. He slumped back onto his back. That SHT hurts like a beach. Now he had some pretty new scrapes and bruises. Lovely. "F you too, God. Just kill me, you coward." Izuku stared up at the sky and contemplated his life decisions. "So kid, you got a safe place to stay. Because otherwise, I'm dragging you to my bestie's place. And you have no say in the matter." Peppermint seemed shocked that Izuku was still concerned about him. He had just asked the literal beach of the sky to commit a La Toaster bath on him. Was he okay? "I'm literally taller than you." Izuku raised his middle finger to the kid, "F off." Izuku pushed himself up onto his elbows. Ignoring when he nearly slipped on his own wing. "Answer the question, Peppermint." Nightwalker glared up at the tall boy. He pulled off his sunglasses, so that Todoroki could see it. Peppermint muffled a chuckle with his hand. "Not really. Shitface knows where Mom lives apparently. I don't doubt he'll figure out where my siblings are, so." Todoroki shrugged. Nightwalker shoved himself onto his feet. He then shook off the dirt from his wings. "Well, today's your lucky day. I know a guy that can hook you up with a place to stay for a bit." Nightwalker stretched his arms above his head and flared his wings out. "Then I can get you an actual place to stay. I'm sure Annie could help with that." He mumbled that last part to himself. Nightwalker whistled a few times, then tweeted like a bird. Apparently able to summon a whole murder. He rummaged through his pockets. Eventually he produced some bird seed in a Ziploc bag. "You want to feed them? They'll be nicer if you do." Todoroki looked bewildered but shrugged and nodded. The crows hopped around Nightwalker and Todoroki. A few braver crows that were more familiar with Nightwalker even hopped onto his shoulders. "I am the superior birdman." Nightwalker giggled. "Hawks would be so jealous. Oh my god. Dude, take a picture. Do it doit 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 doit. Nightwalker unlocked his phone, and nearly threw it at Todoroki in his excitement. You know what? F the picture, take AF video. He can't tweet as well as I can. Nightwalker grinned. Having mutated vocal cords is fun. Shudo nearly laughed with Nightwalker at how excited he was about ruining someone's day. He hit the record button. Nightwalker began to tweet at the crows on his arms, then he whistled at the murder surrounding him. They crouched down, and got a shot of Nightwalker feeding the birds. Just having a moment. Tweeting to the birds and the birds responding. Shudo cut the recording just as they both started to giggle, then burst out laughing. Nightwalker snatched his phone back, opening Twitter and sending it to Hawks. The student has surpassed the teacher. He grinned at Shudo, and Shudo felt his heart jump. Okay. Nightwalker wheezed. I think it's time I got you to the place you'll be staying for a hot minute. Nightwalker smiled at Shudo, you ready to take flight again, pretty boy? I won't drop you. Nightwalker winked at him. Not unless you want me to. Shudo grew a flustered red as he tried to come up with a response to this short green flirt. Why did Natsuo think that he was an untouchable vigilante? Nightwalker simply laughed at his misery. Come on, Peppermint. I need to call my friend before we get there. Which means we have to walk for a bit. Shudo gave up on giving a response and just shook his head. He followed after Nightwalker. Until they came to the edge of the building. The Effer just jumped off. He flapped his wings a few times. To lower the chance of falling on his face. Maybe. Probably. Shudo didn't have that privilege. What the F dash? The short stack spun around and held out his arms. Just jump. I'll catch you. Shudo did not believe that. Shudo massaged his temples. I think you would immediately crumple under my weight. I won't. How is he so cheerful? Okay. If I die, my ghost is haunting you. Shudo took a few steps back, before taking a running start. He jumped off the edge onto the lower building. Into Nightwalker's outstretched arms. When he landed, his foot slipped off the edge. Just as Nightwalker caught him. Shudo scrambled to stop falling. He wasn't able to grab anything, except for Nightwalker. Nightwalker was able to steady Shudo. Shudo slowly planted his foot onto the edge of the building. He didn't want to compromise Nightwalker's grip. So this is how it feels to be tall. Nightwalker peered down into Shudo's eyes. Your eyes are really pretty. A shame I can't just stare into them a day. Shudo let out a strangled sound as his face became a red mess again. Stop flirting with me and help me off the side of this building. Nightwalker laughed as he did just that. Shudo thought he had a very pleasant laugh. One that sent warmth running through his chest and goosebumps down his arms. I need to phone my friend, walk down this fire escape but do it quietly, MK. He doesn't think I'm still on patrol. Nightwalker pointed at a slightly rusted fire escape before he launched himself off the side of the building. Well, I guess I have to figure out how to not die on my own. Shudo mumbled to himself. He scrubbed a hand over his face. Nightwalker needed to stop being so pretty. Chapter 9. Izuku was currently panicking. How was he about to explain to Kit Kat that he had kidnapped a hero's, let's face it, Endeavor isn't a hero, kid. And that he needed him to harbor him. Maybe he should just call Annie. But Annie is a villain. In conclusion, Izuku was F. Because Annie wasn't an actual option. He had to call Kat. As Izuku pulled up Katsuki's contact, he chewed on his sleeve anxiously. He pressed the dial button, and prayed for mercy. Even if the gods above laughed at his suffering, maybe they'd be nice. And not let Kat answer. The call clicked when Kat answered in a groggy voice. God damn it, Izu, why can't you ever let me just sleep in? Kat groaned, his voice ragged on the phone. F you. Izuku made a mental note to force him to drink water. Dehydrated beach. Izuku sighed. Figuring this was as good as any to segue into the reason he called. I'll let you sleep more. If you harbor a kid I just kidnapped. Izuku bulldozed forward before Kat could interject. His abusive father just tried to kidnap him to have lunch. And do whatever the F else, so I did the only rational thing and took him. Katsuki was quiet as Izuku spoke, and he doesn't have anywhere to go. His voice was still groggy but he sounded more awake now. Izuku huffed out a sigh. Izuku scuffed his shoes in the dirt. No, I asked, his father would find it. He examined his wings as he responded. Making sure he would still be able to fly for a bit before he preened through his feathers again. He frowned at how many cracked feathers he found. He'd need to have Kat look through his feathers later. Just to help grab the ones he couldn't reach. Kat sighed, all right. I'll take him in. He better not have a hero complex like you, my mom would find him immediately. Izuku heard the sound of fabrics rustling. When will you get here? Do I need to unlock my window so you don't fly into it like an actual bird again? Har har. That was one time. Izuku looked around. I think we're just a few away, and the door will be fine. Thanks a ton, Kat. Katsuki was laughing at Izuku too much to respond. So, Izuku just hung up for him. Izuku walked over to where Todoroki was still struggling down the fire escape. You don't know how to get down one of these, do you? Izuku leaned onto the wall of the building. He was shocked. He thought everyone knew how to use it. Gee, what gave you that idea? Todoroki responded. Izuku could hear his eye roll without having to see it. But see it he very much did. While still trying to step down to the next step. Without letting go of his safety bar. Izuku sighed, swooped Todoroki from the little progress he had made, and landed them both on the ground easily. You still weigh bricks, holy F. Cracking his back, Izuku waved for Half and Half Boy to follow him. He pushed his sunglasses back up his nose. My friend's place is this way. He said you could stay, as long as you don't have a hero complex, like me. The butt. Todoroki snorted into his hand. That definitely sounds like you. Why would it be an issue if I had one though? His mom is a bit of a beach. Izuku said without batting an eye. She likes to shout a lot, but she means well. Kat's really loud too. Hope you don't mind. Izuku watched Todoroki's face for his response. When he shook his head, Izuku laced his fingers through Todoroki's hands, before pulling him forward through the street. Chaos still echoed around them from earlier. The press had arrived by now. Izuku made sure to keep his face away from their cameras. He held his wings in front of Todoroki's face as well. It wouldn't do for Endeavor to track them from the cameras. Izuku pulled Todoroki into an alley once they were within a block of the neighborhood. Izuku rummaged through his bag. He pulled out a hoodie and a cute stitched t-shirt. He threw the hoodie at Todoroki. He also threw a beret in his face. Put those on and cover your hair. Izuku then turned around and started pulling off his CRP top. He had a tank top underneath it. He also just wanted to toss on the stitched shirt. Izuku grinned when his pastel stitched shirt was finally on display. It was a white shirt with splashes of blues and greens, tie-dyed under the decal image of Stitch. It highlighted the blues in Izuku's eyes. Izuku rummaged around in his bag for a moment more, before pulling out a tube of mascara and applying it to his eyes. A touch of feminine to his face would help keep his identity safe from the papa. Todoroki awkwardly stood there while he waited for Izuku to finish. Izuku decided that he might as well, and pulled a beret from his pockets, then pinned his fringe out of his face. Might as well F the police over some more. Once he rolled his clothes into a cylinder, Izuku shoved all of them into the bag and slung it over his shoulder. He turned back towards Todoroki, who was trying to tuck away his red hair. Izuku pulled a bobby pin from his curls, and helped him pin it away. There you are. Certainly not looking like a freshly kidnapped kid anymore. Izuku mumbled. You look a lot different than you'd think Nightwalker would look. Todoroki piped up suddenly. Izuku chuckled. Thanks, babe. That's the point. Now, come on, Cat's house is just down here. Izuku smiled with a skip in his step. Pulling Todoroki's arm, Izuku grinned. His wings fluttered where they laid limp on his back. Todoroki smiled down at Izuku and gods if that didn't cause butterflies in Izuku's stomach. Izuku. Don't crush on the straight guy. He was raised by endeavor. No way would he be gay or even bi. Izuku screamed at himself in his mind. Even worse. He might be homophobic. Gods. Imagine if he repressed his sexuality because of it. Izuku bit his lip. His mom may not be the best. But at least she never hurt him for liking other boys. Izuku warped his grin to look more natural and not forced. He pushed down his more ugly emotions. Focus on the now. Todoroki would be safe now. Izuku could take care of him. Izuku tugged on his arm to move the slightest bit faster. Out of sight would be safer, but Cat needed to see them coming to unlock the door. Oh. There it is. Izuku pointed at a typical American suburban home, backyard, 2 stories, a garden, white cricket fence. Izuku was shocked the first time he came over. It was very plain. The paint on the front of the house was a light yellow. The windows were lined with shutters. Blue curtains fluttered in said windows. The porch has a porch swing, appropriately enough. A white deck, and white posts. Even a few potted plants on the sill and the edge of the porch. It was homey. Izuku had helped paint a few of the walls. Even gave Andy some of her plants. His cactus was still living strong. Izuku turned towards Todoroki, to see his reaction. He muffled his chuckle with his hand. Todoroki had his mouth half open, his eyes had widened and his posture had slackened backwards. It was surely not what Todoroki had been expecting. Izuku grinned behind his face mask. He tucked a part of his fringe back behind his ear. His hair never stayed in clips for long. This looks like something Mom would tell me to avoid. Are there any drag dealers around here? That would cinch the deal. Shudo huffed a laugh. He shook his head then turned to Nightwalker. Why re you just staring? We need to get inside before someone sees you. Nightwalker pulled Shudo's arm with a smile. What, are you scared? There's no reason to be. Cat's just an angry Pomeranian. Cat's an angry Pomeranian. Shudo was confused. That didn't make any sense. Why would you name a dog Cat? That was just. No. Nightwalker nodded, laughing at Shudo as he tried over the step to the front door. Here I'll even knock for you. Raising his hand, Nightwalker knocked a pattern on the door. He didn't completely curl his hand, Shudo noticed. Did he hurt himself with his nails? Maybe he was like Shudo like that. Quirk drawbacks like that weren't exactly common. Maybe he was in the same situation as Shudo. The pattern was knocked back. Was this a fever dream? Nightwalker giggled then actually knocked like a normal person. Shudo was about to question Nightwalker. When the door was thrown open, to what appeared to be a human Pomeranian. Nightwalker was right. Angry Pomeranian. He had spiky blonde hair, a well-built muscular body, striking red eyes, and he looked moderately annoyed at Nightwalker. He leaned against the open door while glancing around behind the street behind them. Nightwalker perked up. Cat, this is the child that I kidnapped, he gestured from the blonde behind the door to Shudo. Child that I kidnapped, this is Katsuki Bakugu. My best friend since diapers. Nightwalker grinned at Bakugu. Fully satisfied with his introductions. Bakugu stuck his hand out to shake with Todoroki. Bakugu nodded as he glanced around. Nice to meet you. Get inside before the neighbors get nosy again. He grabbed Nightwalker's arm and pulled him inside. Shudo nodded slowly. The angry Pomeranian joke made sense now. Once Shudo was inside, Nightwalker finally took off his medical mask. He took the clip out of his hair, and tossed his sunglasses onto the living room table. Shudo felt a blush rise to his face. He had to remind himself to close his mouth as well. He very wisely ignored Bakugu's smug look. "He's cute, huh?" Shudo glanced at Bakugu for a moment. "Yes," he murmured quickly. Bakugu grinned at him for a moment before moving on. "Kitchen is this way, I bet you're both hungry." Bakugu sent a pointed look at Nightwalker. "Did you introduce yourself yet, freckle face?" Nightwalker stopped bouncing after Bakugu. "Shoot. I only mentioned what the police call me." He spun around with a hand out at Shudo. I kidnapped you, so I think that bypasses all formality we have." "Sorry, Peppermint-kun, I'm just not comfortable giving out my name yet. But you can call me any nickname you want. Or Zukuin." Zukuin looked to Bakugu for approval before smiling shyly at Shudo. Shudo wanted Nightwalker's sunglasses when he grinned. Shudo tugged down the beret in front of his face. "Sure. Shudo Todoroki. You can call me Shudo." He pulled off the beret then the hoodie. "Thank you," he said. Zukuin hummed while looking back at him. "For what?" "For saving me." Chapter 10, Karaat. Izuku whined. "Can you help me preen my wings? They're itchy." He leaned over Katsuki's shoulder. "Watcha making?" he asked. "Yes, I'll help you with your wings, feather brain." Kat nudged Izuku's wing out of his way. "I'm making Katsudon." He nearly jabbed Izuku with his elbow. "You're in the way, Freckles." Izuku stuck his tongue out at Katsuki, moving his wing away from the hot stove top. "Aw yeah. My favorite." He wrapped his wings around Katsuki's shoulders. Kat, the lovely person that he is, swatted Izuku's wings away. "Yeah. Move. You're going to get your wings splattered in oil, stupid." Izuku hugged Kat's middle after moving his wings. "Thea onkya Kat." He bounced out of the kitchen. He spotted Shudo awkwardly sitting on the couch. Izuku plopped himself right next to Shudo. "How ya feeling, Peppermint?" Izuku wanted to reach out, but he didn't know if his touch would be appreciated right now. Shudo hummed. He leaned back into the comfortable couch. If it meant he was nearly touching Izuku, no one else needed to know. "Like I just got kidnapped," he mumbled. Being put into traumatizing situations was tiring. "Who knew?" Izuku hummed. He slowly wrapped his wing around Shudo's shoulders, giving him plenty of time to tell Izuku to stop. "You know that's valid. Anything I can do to help." He tilted his head like a puppy. Shudo was quickly enamored by how bright Izuku's eyes were. He shook his head, then actually thought about it. "Do you have a phone I can call my family with? They're likely worried, and I want my sister to enjoy her day off." Izuku nodded quickly as he stood up. "Yeah, sure, gimme a sec." He jogged over to the entrance hallway. He searched through his jacket pockets for a few moments, grinning victoriously when he found the new phone. Izuku jogged back out to Shudo. He dropped the phone into Shudo's lap, accidentally stopping too late and being nose to nose with him. "Oops. Sorry." Izuku scrambled backwards. "Sorry if I made you uncomfortable." Izuku pointed at the phone in Shudo's lap. "You can use that to call your family. It should be easy enough." Shudo nodded. He got up and went to the entrance hallway. Izuku waved calmly, then sat back on the couch. Izuku slowly relaxed. He closed his eyes and just listened to Katsuki cooking, and the soft sound of Shudo talking in the front entrance. Izuku whistled a few small tweets into the air. Katsuki and Shudo shouldn't be able to hear him. Izuku just wanted to stim for a bit. Get out some of his excessive energy. The sound of Shudo explaining that he was okay sounded close to crying. Izuku tweeted louder when he realized he could hear Shudo's phone call. He slowly started to doze from his spot on the couch. Izuku let his wings relax onto the couch cushions. His head dropped backwards, and he pulled his legs to sit crisscross. Izuku hummed softly when he heard Katsuki curse. The sound of Shudo talking was more muffled now. He must have gone outside. Izuku sat dozing on the couch for quite some time. The sound of cat cooking and the delicious smell of food lulling him to rest. Izuku smiled. He perked up when he heard footsteps approaching him. Food's ready. Come eat when you want peppermint. Cat's voice was so warm. The gravel tone to it made Izuku just want to relax more. Izuku reached his wing out towards him. Katsuki gently pushed Izuku's wing away. Nah, food first. You're pale as SHT, F face. Izuku grumbled as he pushed himself forward. Pages. He stole Katsuki's drink. He took a pointed sip. Quickly learning that it was F Coke. Katsuki grinned smugly at Izuku as he stole it back. Beach. Izuku stuck his tongue out at Kat as he walked into the kitchen. Where? Katsuki stared at Izuku while he struggled to get down a bowl. He grabbed 3 pairs of chopsticks while Izuku struggled. Free entertainment. Kat was ever so kind as to get the stupid bowl down for Izuku. Joke's on you, that's actually true. Izuku shot finger guns at Kat. F-er. Go eat your F food, TWK. Katsuki jabbed Izuku's side with a pair of chopsticks. Fine, but. Izuku zoomed to the living room to steal his favorite pillow. He snatched it up, set it on the ground, and got comfortable. He stretched his wings obnoxiously over the couch. Grinning smugly at Katsuki when he entered the room. Either move your wing or I'm sitting on it. Katsuki threatened with a blank face. Izuku very quickly shuffled his wings to leave Kat a space. Thank you. He settled down behind Izuku, calmly eating his food. Izuku savored every bite. Kat's food is so F good. Mom's food ain't got SHT on Kat. Her cooking is like a basic white mom. He jerked at an unexpected touch to his wings. He quickly settled down when he realized it was just Kat. The rhythmic carting through his feathers caused Izuku to melt into the floor. Izuku frowned when the touch on his feathers stopped. Ka-rat. That felt good. Why'd you stoop? He whined unashamedly. Breathe freckles. I'm just getting a microfiber towel to help clean out the dirt. Kat's voice echoed from the kitchen. Izuku trilled out happily. Yeah, I know. I'm coming. Kat's footsteps swiftly grew louder again. Izuku hummed when he heard Peppermint grab himself some food too. The feeling of his towel being tossed onto his wings caused Izuku to giggle. He shifted his wings to allow both icy hot pain relief and pom-pom to sit down. Kat's hands buried themselves into Izuku's plumage. Careful to avoid touching near his shoulder blades. He learned his lesson after Izuku nearly fell out of his lap giggling. Katsuki gently felt over each feather, pulling out any feather that was cracked or otherwise broken. He massaged over the new ready-to-open pin feathers. Gently wiping down the extra oil from the base all the way down to the bottom of Izuku's feathers. The soothing repetitiveness caused Izuku to doze off again. Shudo had started to lean over to watch Kat, sometime around the halfway point. Kat let Izuku snooze for a little bit, before nudging him. Izuku opened one eye to glare at Kat, softening when he saw Peppermint watching. Are you chill with letting Peppermint watch? Izuku hummed softly. Sure. Just don't tickle me again. Izuku quirked a small smile at Kat's offended squawk. Katsuki chuckled softly. He finished wiping down the last feather on Izuku's first wing. He pushed himself over to the next, now pressed up against Shudo. He tucked his hands under Izuku's down again, tilted to show him what he was doing. He gently sifted through the down feathers to find any more dirt or broken quills. He gently rubbed the shell off of the ready-to-open pins again, then started to wipe down his overdown. Katsuki pressed 2 of his fingers to Izuku's throat. His pulse was slow and even. Katsuki had to muffle his chuckle with his hand. He fell asleep from me preening his wings. He clarified to a confused Shudo. He usually doesn't, but he must be exhausted. Shudo smiled lightly. Katsuki picked up Izuku's limp body, struggling to not trip over his wings. Shudo took pity on the poor fool, and helped fold Izuku's wings on top of his body. Katsuki set Izuku onto his bed, covering his corpse with a blanket. "Sleep, dumbass," Izuku later called Annie. After his nap for a few hours, of course. Katsuki wouldn't have let Izuku leave without one. Izuku hesitated for a moment, before pressing the call button on the contact. He let out a sigh of relief when Annie picked up. "Hey Annie, it's Nightwalker." He rubbed his eyes. Maybe he should go to sleep again. He was still tired. Izuku sighed softly. There was muffled talking on the other side of the phone, then Annie's voice came out clearly. "Hey Nightwalker. Sorry for the silence. You called while I was helping a friend out. How can I help you, hun?" Izuku heard the sound of wiring in the background as well as chatter from multiple people. Izuku ran a hand through his hair. "Did I call at a bad time?" he asked. "Nah kid, I'm just helping Alice out with her bakery. Nothing illegal, don't worry." Izuku heard what sounded like a young person say, "Oh my god. Annie. Why didn't you tell me we were committing crimes? I would have put my homework down." In the background, Izuku snickered into his hand. Izuku huffed in relief. "You know that kid you were talking to me about? The kidnapped kid. He's a Todoroki. The man that kidnapped him was Endeavor." Izuku shifted his weight forward, and looked over the edge of the building he was on. The phone was silent for a moment. "SHT kid. Hold on for a sec." Izuku hummed, barely able to make out the words being said. He then heard a clatter and a shout. He eyed a guy that was stalking out a jewelry shop. Izuku didn't like his vibe. "Okay. I have a girl that can wire you money to help take care of him. I'm already using my foster license on a special case, so I can't take him in." Izuku chuckled at the offended squawk in the background, as well as Annie saying, "Yes, I'm talking about you. Oh, don't give me that look. You make fun of me all the time for being cringy, I'm going to do the same with you." Izuku nodded. "I have him staying at a friend's place. Do you have any place he could stay on the down low?" Annie hummed. Izuku heard her talk again, muddled through the phone. The words Hazel and Alice along with safe house, before Annie became clear again. "I have a guy that owes me a favor, he might be able to hook the kid up with something. Unfortunately, my guy doesn't have any rooms right now. He had to take in a couple other kids for me." Izuku hummed. "You should probably stop adopting so much." Izuku ignored whatever Annie was trying to say, anyway. "I need to go catch the guy I've been eyeing for a bit, call me if anything changes." He glared when they started trying to pick the lock. "So stupid." Annie laughed, "Alright kid. Always working, I see. I'll call you if I can find anyone. If you get attached, don't worry about telling me." Izuku huffed a laugh. Yes. Have a good day Annie." Izuku stood up and popped his back. Annie hummed, then hung up. "Time to go to work." Izuku grinned as he jumped down. When Izuku woke up, something felt wrong. The house was too quiet. His room smelled like bleach. His wings burned slightly. Not all over, just in certain spots. Almost like lines. Izuku took a breath in through his mouth. The bleach tore at Izuku's throat as it came up. Izuku coughed through the feeling, retching as his stomach turned itself inside out. "Good morning, Izuku." Mom called through the door. "I made breakfast, come eat when you're hungry." Izuku gagged again, unable to respond. Mom's voice came closer to the door. "Izuku. It's rude to not respond, you know." Izuku coughed, sorry. He retched into the can. "Mom, I'll be down soon." Mom hummed. Her steps echoed in the hallway as she walked away. Izuku sighed in relief. His throat felt torn, and he didn't want to eat anything. Izuku shoved himself up. He grabbed a tank top, shorts, and a towel. A shower and a charcoal tablet should help his stomach. Izuku zoned out. Not really feeling his body move. He went through the motions, he plastered a smile on his face. But Izuku wasn't there. He ate breakfast with Mom. He mostly sipped his water, and pushed his food around. Izuku walked back to his room, still feeling disoriented and dazed. Not understanding why he was feeling this way, Izuku looked it up. Apparently it was called disassociation. And he might not remember this when he calmed down. Great. Just great. Phoning Cat was out of the question, he was probably still asleep. Izuku shrugged, and eventually decided that patrol would probably help. It was the most likely thing that would pull him out of this. Izuku shoved himself up. He pulled a hoodie over his tank top. Along with some leggings and a notebook into a small backpack. Thinking about it, it might also be a good idea for Izuku to buy some snacks while he's out to put in his bag to eat. For both at school, and during the night. Izuku hummed. He should go visit Reni-san soon. She always had something that Izuku could do. Maybe he could help her bake again. That was always fun. Looking distastefully at his shoes, Izuku sighed and put them on. Cringing when they rubbed his skin through his socks. Izuku shoved his stuff out the window. He grabbed his cash as a last-minute thought. Izuku jogged down to the supermarket. He grabbed a basket and tossed multiple cheap snacks into it. Fruit snacks, crackers, protein bars, you name it. Izuku probably had it in his basket. He stopped in the temporary dye section for a moment. Izuku eyed some neon blue spray dye. He shrugged before he put it in his basket. As he headed to the checkout, Izuku made sure to avoid the scruffy-looking black-haired guy in the juice section. He didn't need to get caught right before even going on patrol. No, thank you. While he paid for his items, Izuku smiled politely at the poor teenager that was dealing with Karen next to him. He put the leftover yen he had still in his wallet into the donation box, and whispered a small, "I'm so sorry for you." The smile he got in response was worth it. Nodding to them, Izuku took his exit. He then scaled the building next to the store. After putting everything into his bag, Izuku looked down at the people below him. As he leaned over the edge, Izuku calmly took in how none of them cared. When he looked at the date, Izuku realized it was his birthday. Explains why Mom was so sad this morning. He nearly died on his birthday. How fun. So. He was 13 now. Hooray for Izuku. Fruit snacks to celebrate. And dyeing his wings blue. Just to F with Mom. Izuku was quickly reminded of the burning this morning. He took a deep breath, and looked at his wings. He found small cut after small cut on his wings. They were hidden by his feathers, but they were noticeable. Izuku grit his teeth. Surely, Mom had a reason to do this. Izuku rationed to himself. She wouldn't just want to hurt you. He may not know it now, but Mom always had a reason. Slinging the backpack over his shoulders, while being careful of his wings, Izuku took off. Running over the rooftops, Izuku finally felt free. Free from responsibilities, from Inko, from everything. Izuku laughed, unashamed. He leapt from a 3-story building onto a 2-story one, opening his wings to increase drag. When he saw a taller building coming up, he simply arched his wings, kicked off the one he was on, then ran up the next one. He flapped his wings all the while to make sure he didn't fall, of course. Izuku stumbled as he tried to catch himself after a bad fall. His ankle gave a sickening squelch, then a pop. The pain caused Izuku to nearly fall. He was barely able to catch himself on a wall. Izuku shook it off. He took a running start and jumped to the next building. His ankle dulled to an aching throb. Every JRK caused it to scream with fire. Izuku continued running over the buildings until he didn't feel detached from his emotions. And the pain in his ankle became noticeable. Maybe running wasn't the smartest idea. Now his ankle felt like it was burning. Fun. Izuku decided that his ankle wasn't worth stopping his fun. He continued moving, granted by using his wings more. It was thankfully dark by now. Meaning, no one would be able to see him. Unfortunately. Eraserhead saw Izuku running on top of the buildings. One of the only heroes that actually looked around them. But that also meant all he saw was unlicensed quirk use. Eraserhead ran after Izuku. Trying to capture Izuku on his 13th birthday. How fun. Izuku ran across the rooftops as fast as he could, and faster. He ran until his still injured foot slipped, and Eraser could grab him. He had shot out the stupid scaff before Izuku could fall to his much preferred death. Izuku did not enjoy hanging upside down, he decided. Especially when he was too tired to keep his wings tucked to his back. They hung like limp arms above his head. Technically, if they were built like chicken wings, they were human arms but longer, right? Wait, focus. Izuku, focus, Eraserhead is talking. His face looked really weird upside down. Do you realize how dangerous it is to run on rooftops at night? You could trip and die. Or be injured. Do you have a death wish? Oh, his quirk was active. The red reminded Izuku of Katsuki. Izuku sighed. Can you put me down before I pass out? Please. Not in the mood for that. Aizawa bulldozed on. I can understand going out around sunset for a few hours, but midnight. Are you trying to end up dead in an alleyway? No, Eraserhead, I promise to be more careful, Eraserhead. I'm sorry for putting myself in trouble, Eraserhead. Izuku responded in a monotone voice. Do you even care? Aizawa looked like he was about to smack down with Izuku. Izuku shrugged. His wings were starting to go numb. This SCKED. Can you put me down now? My wings are going numb. Eraserhead looked near shocked. Well, as shocked as you can be when you repress all emotion from your face. Accidentally putting Izuku down too quickly, Eraserhead nearly slammed Izuku's face into the concrete. Izuku, the genius he is, bolted the moment he got his feet underneath him. Jumping down the fire escape, Izuku waved goodbye to Eraserhead, and took small flaps of his wings to get to the next building. He knocked it against the walls of the building a few times, but he needed to get away more than not cause injuries to himself. Izuku then saw a criminal and decided that tonight might not be such a waste after all.